We have a joint subcommittee hearing of the Executive Gaming Committee and Revenue and Finance Sales and Other Tax Subcommittee. This is subject matter only, but we are going to take roll for the purposes of making sure people that came a long way can be accounted for. So we have a letter from Leader Durkin replacing permanent member permanent member Rice with temporary member Severn. Welcome, Representative Severn. And we have a letter from Leader Durkin replacing permanent member Hayes with temporary member Butler. Representative Butler, welcome. We also have Senator Laura Murphy here who is observing. Welcome, Senator. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Rita? Here. Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Greg Harris? Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Severn?
Here.
Mr. Rita?
Still here.
Here.
David Harris? Brian Stewart? Art Turner? Mr. Zalewski?
Here. Okay. So before we begin, a couple of housekeeping things. It's the chair's goal, along with Representative Rita, to try to finish by 2 or 2:30 today. So it's going to be hard to do that. So we're going to ask witnesses to be mindful that if they have written testimony, we're all blessed with the ability of great staffs to digest written testimony. So when you get up here, if you can distill your written testimony into a few remarks, that would be very helpful for us. And then Representative Harris, I know you want to add something at the outset, and I don't know if Representative Butler does as well. So Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we bringing in lunch since we're going till 2 o'clock?
I don't know.
First of all, let me just simply say I want to congratulate the chair, both of the committee as well as the subcommittee, for having this hearing. This is a significant bill, lots of moving parts, can mean an awful lot of revenue for the state of Illinois. It is a very complicated bill, having gone through the bill, and I just compliment the chair for holding these meetings, and certainly encourage a lot more because of the complexity and the large size of this bill. But again, I think this will be a beneficial hearing. Thank you.
Representative Butler. All right, so the first three panels will be Chairman Rita is going to present House Committee Amendment number 3 to Senate Bill 7. Cockfield, you're on deck as panel 2, and then the City of Chicago and Cook County Board, Cook County are in panel 3 in the whole. So, Chairman Rita, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. What I'd like to do is just quickly walk through Senate Bill 7, and then it's Amendment 3, and then we'll move to hear from COGFA following going through that, if that's all right with you. This is an issue I've been working on for over 5 years, and so let me just go to some of the points of Senate Bill 7, the original version, and then what Amendment 3 added to keep them separate. What it does is create 6 new riverboat casinos, one in Chicago, Lake County, that would be located North Chicago, Park City, or Waukegan. South suburbs within the boundaries of Bloom, Bremen, Calumet Ridge, Thornton, and Worth townships. Williamson County, Walker's Bluff as it was known, Rockford, and then Danville. The new casinos would be go up to 1,600 positions with a total position cap of 2,000 with the lose it or lose it provision. A temporary facility for 24 months within a 12-month extension pending the completion of a permanent facility. Peoria's riverboat can relocate within 10 miles of its current location, and then going back to the positions, the unused positions cannot be relocated to the tracks, which we'll get to a little bit further here about what we've done for the racetracks. The Chicago casino would go up to 4,000 positions, and it could be land-based, and a temporary facility also would be permitted. Slots at O'Hare and Midway airports, and then under the ownership regulation, the authority and the operator to be licensed by the Gaming Board authority is permitted. The operator's license for 4 years. The Auditor General will audit the authority every 2 years, including bond insurance. Split money between the city and state is part of a bid for the operator's license. The mayor will appoint a 5-member board. Board members serve 5-year terms and pay $300 per meeting. The mayor and the Illinois Gaming Board have the authority to remove board members, and it creates an advisory board to confirm the authorities utilized minority and female-owned businesses. Horse tracks, up to 1,200 positions for Arlington and Hawthorne, up to 900 positions for Fairmont. Quad City Downs to get 350 positions and can have up to 900 positions once they go to 96 live racing dates within a 15-day period. They have in this it contains a use it or lose them provision, but the board could allocate unused positions to other tracks. The pay per position and fees is same as the casinos, which we'll get to the fees and what that would cost in a minute here. The slots must be within 300 yards of live racing, and it removes the sunset on ADW, which we currently have now. The tax rates, 2 separate tax rates for table games and slot machines that goes into effect on January 1 after opening of the Chicago Casino. A $3 admission tax for new riverboat casinos and racinos, $2 to the state, and $1 to the host municipality or county, except for the splits in Rockford, Fairmont, Hawthorne, and the racino. Tax credit for 9 existing riverboats includes displays up to $2 million of the cost of constructing a new facility. Alton Casino will be eligible for a credit up to 8% of the total cost of a new facility. Fees, $30,000 per position in Cook County, $17,500 per position outside of Cook County. The reconciliation fee, after 3 years, payable over 2 years. A non-refundable $100,000 application fee and a $100,000 licensure fee, non-refundable $50,000 background fee for riverboat casinos and racinos. Creates a gaming facilities revenue fund for all internal application license fees, including $50 million from the Chicago operator, and per position fee for the first $50 million is allocated to the Illinois Gaming Board for regulation for their regulation. Revenue distributions, riverboat and casino revenue used for education, racino revenue used for the purse account, and licensee keep remaining, but riverboat casinos, host municipalities will have a 5% AGR exemption for Rockford and Lake County boats. For racinos, the 5% of the AGR local share to be split 3% to the host municipality, 2% to the host county, and exception for Fairmont with 5% to be split, with 45% going to both Alton and East St. Louis. Video gaming increases the maximum wager for video gaming terminals from $2 to $4, with a maximum award for individual hand from $500 to $1,199. Authorizes wide area of progressive system link for a progressive, which would link slots and electronic gaming machines across a network. There's a number of ethics provisions that we added in here. Which we'll get to. What was added in the amendment, Amendment 3, we had table games to racetracks, which will be taxed at the same rate as casinos per Senate Bill 7. Additional language for a new standard-bred horse racing track in the south suburbs, and it allows for gaming license under a newly established track. Language requiring contractual agreement between the Queen and Fairmont for East St. Louis for Fairmont to get their license. Under casinos, a preference for any new applicant for a license who does not currently hold a license under the Riverboat Gaming Act and whose main corporate headquarters have been located in Illinois within 6 miles of the proposed casino location over 4 years, requires local municipalities to adopt an ordinance supporting new casinos. Video gaming prohibits casino malls. It grants a sixth machine and allows revenues from the local share to downstate police and fire pensions. Adds 5% tax on video gaming terminals, revenues from 30% to 35%. Revenue split for the state's emission tax, privilege tax, and old bill payments to a third to the construction fund, a third to the pension stabilization fund, and a third to elementary and secondary education on all the revenues. Other items in there allow sweepstake games to be registered with the licensed with the Department of Revenue, and leaves internet gaming, and we don't touch on internet gaming, fantasy sports, or any sports betting in any of these amendments. Be happy to. That's an overview of Senate Bill 7 and Amendment 3.
Questions from members of the committee? Representative Harris.
Just a quick one, and we'll get into the details with some of the folks that testify, but I did have one question. I know we're dealing with House Amendment 3, but the bill came out of the Senate on a 33 to 24 vote, and my analysis said that there was the first vote on something called a grand bargain bill. Are you familiar with this or no?
When it was
Maybe the
originally
senator
started
who's
a
with
few
us
years-
today could tell us, but that came out 31-26, and then on the second or non-grand bargain, it was 33-24. Can you
This
tell?
is when it was first started a couple years ago.
Goes back that far,
This is-
okay.
Yes,
All right.
going back almost 2 years.
Thanks.
And then what House Amendment 3 includes everything that I walked through on 7, so 3 it would become the bill as amended. But I thought it was important to separate what was in the original 7 and what was added.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Rita, thank you. I know you want to, you're going to be available as we go through this hearing. I don't know if we're going to have Kakfa, I always get that wrong, come up now and do the analysis of Senate Bill 7, House Committee Amendment Number 3.
Good morning. My name is Clayton Klinke. I'm the Executive Director of the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability.
Director, we get twitchy if the Revenue and Finance Committee doesn't hear from you, so welcome back, and
Thank you,
we're
sir.
glad you could testify today.
I am joined at the table today by Eric Noggle. Eric has been with the Commission for 20 years, and he is our resident specialist on both analysis of gaming legislation and revenue projections. We have provided a PowerPoint to staff that he has distributed to members of the committee. I'll just give a very brief overview on some of the highlights on that. Eric will actually go through the PowerPoint in more detail. To provide some basic background, we provided the PowerPoint with information including trends in gaming receipts for both riverboats and video gaming, and the associated tax revenues from the riverboats and video gaming. This information is for both Illinois, and then we also include information in there, some data for how we see the performance coming from some neighboring states, Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri. With this background in place, the PowerPoint then takes a look at Senate Bill 7 and the proposed gaming amendments in that bill, the tax structure in the bill, and then our revenue projections based on those variables. The projections we have included include Senate Bill 7 as engrossed, Senate Bill 7 with the changes that were made by House Amendment Number 3, and then we also included a projection in there based on if you had the changes to the gaming expansion, but if you kept the existing current structure for the tax rates. Some of the main takeaways I would point out before I turn it over to Eric, from FY12 to FY18, we have seen an increase in overall combined gross receipts from riverboats and video gaming. Overall, this is an increase of 70%. This is a reflection of the video gaming. If you look at just the riverboats during this time period, it's actually down 15%. The tax revenues follow a very similar pattern during this time period, with the revenues up 62% combined, but with the boats down about 14%. If you look at how various entities have performed in the Chicago metro area, the Illinois boats are down, but they have fared better than the boats on the Indiana side, which have seen a reduction of about twice what the Illinois boats have seen. As far as the analysis for Senate Bill 7, we looked at the expanded opportunities for gaming in Senate Bill 7 as engrossed with the new proposed graduated tax structure in that bill. At full implementation, that shows in our PowerPoint an influx of over $1 billion, but I would also point out that the reoccurring revenues are at the level of about $75 million, with $14 million of that going to the state. With the amendments that were made in House Amendment number 3, the state share does go up. The state share sees its share goes up to about $116 million. That reflects the change made to the video gaming tax structure from 30 to 35% and the increase in the terminals from 5 to 6. And then the final alternative that we looked at was if we kept the current rate structure in place with the expansion, and that would increase the state share of the revenues up to about $341 million annually. So that's my brief overview. To provide some more detail on that analysis, I'll turn it over to Eric, and he'll walk through that PowerPoint with you.
Good morning. I will start on page 4, and we're going to look at the current trends of the gaming industry. I'm going to go over a little more detail than what Clayton has just provided. In fiscal year 2008, we had nearly $1.8 billion in adjusted gross receipts from the Illinois casinos. And that number had fallen just a little below $1.4 billion in 2011, but then bounced back up to around $1.6 billion with the inclusion of the new Rivers Casino in Des Plaines. But ever since then, the trend has been on a downward trend. At the end of fiscal year 2018, we just had completed. Our revenues now are a little below $1.4 billion, so we're about close to where we were with just 9 casinos in fiscal year 2011. The reason for this decline, there's probably many reasons, but video gaming is definitely a part of this, of the increased competition from video gaming. You can look at the charts on page 5. You can see the number of video gaming terminals in operation. When it started in September of 2012, has constantly increased over the years, and now we are approaching 30,000 terminals statewide in operation. The net terminal income from these video gaming machines has now increased to bringing in between $120 and $140 million per month. We'll turn to page 6. So as Clayton said, we had revenues in fiscal year 2012 from riverboats of $1.6 billion, and that number has decreased to around $1.386 billion in fiscal year 18. That's a 15.5% decline. However, when you include the video gaming revenues on there, the overall increase is 70.3%. So gaming in the state has definitely increased. In terms of tax revenues, it's the same thing, where we had $548 million in revenues from casinos. That number went down to $469.4 million in fiscal year 2018. But when you include the $422 million in video gaming tax revenues, the numbers increased to $891 million in total, bringing an overall increase in tax revenues of 62.6%. Go to page 8. I wanted to look things at a more regional basis. And so we're going to look at the Chicago metropolitan area. And in this, I want to include not only Illinois casinos, but the 5 casinos in the Chicago metropolitan area on the Indiana side. You can see in Indiana in 2009, they had over 10,000 positions. That number has decreased to now it's close to 8,000 positions in 2018. The number in Illinois has been steady around 6,000 positions since Des Plaines came on board in 2012. What this is showing is that the number of gaming positions has definitely gone down And it matches up well with not only the Des Plaines Casino coming on board, but video gaming coming on board as well. So in terms of revenues, we look at page 9. Indiana casinos in the Chicago metropolitan area had $1.115 billion in fiscal year 2012. That number has dropped to $894 million. It seems that those people that were gambling in Indiana, may have been from Illinois, are now seem to be staying home, whether it be from the Des Plaines Casino or because of video gaming in Illinois. So their numbers continue to drop, down 19.8% since the video gaming came on board. And again, the Chicago casino AGR has dropped 9.9% on the Illinois side. So what does this look like when you stack all this revenue in the Chicago metropolitan area? So looking at page 10, again, in the Chicago metropolitan area, for Indiana and Illinois casinos, we had $2.246 billion in fiscal year 2012. If you include video gaming in the Chicago metropolitan area, that adds another $626.6 million in fiscal year 2008. So even though that the other two sources have declined, that number, the total number has increased to $2.540 billion. So overall, revenue in this area has grown 13%. But notice that it's not the same kind of growth that we've had statewide. Most of the growth that we've had from video gaming has been downstate. So the average growth in the Chicago metropolitan area, even with all this gaming, we've now have nearly 11,000 video gaming terminals in the Chicago metropolitan area. But even when all that is included, we've only had an average growth of around 2.6% in the Chicago metropolitan area. So we'll now go into our gaming estimate. Again, the representative gave a nice overview of the changes. I'm going to look at our estimate for the engrossed bill first. So if you turn to page 12, I just want to reemphasize the change in the graduated tax structure. And this is very important to understand when we look at our estimates. Under current law, we have a graduated tax structure for the riverboats where it starts at 15% and it goes up to 50% for any revenues above $200 million. Under this proposal, the rates are decreased. And not only are they decreased, but there's going to be two separate tax structures, one for the table games, one for the electronic gaming devices. Table games will go from 10 to 22.5 and then fall down to 16% for any revenues above $70 million. The gaming tax rate on slot machines will go from 10% up to 40%, but then after it reaches $300 million, it drops from 30% and then down to 20% for any revenues between $350 and $800 million. After $800 million, it does return to 50%, but as I will point out later, there is not a single casino in the Great Lakes region that's even close to that $800 million mark. So it's very unlikely that a casino would reach that 50% mark. We've been asked about our methodology. I won't bore you with all the details of it, but it really goes down to just studying the statistics. There's a lot of great statistics that are out there for casinos, not only in Illinois, but all through the nation. It allows us to understand what kind of revenues that each casino could possibly get. But the other thing that's very important is this, that there is definitely a cannibalization impact that's going to occur anytime you add new casinos. We have many examples of that, not only in Illinois when you had video gaming come on board or when you had Des Plaines come on board, but casinos throughout the country. When you add a new casino, we see a significant decrease in the casinos around that. So we try to account for that in our estimates, and that's what you will see. On page 14 is our estimate for Senate Bill 7 as engrossed if we were to perform it today. It's a little bit different than what we did 2 years ago when this first came out, but pretty much it's the same numbers. We estimate under current law that adjusted gross receipts will reach around $1.382 billion. Under this estimate, we think that the AGR will grow to around $2.446 billion. So that's an increase of over $1 billion in adjusted gross receipts that this proposal would bring in. However, on a state revenue basis, you're only going to increase from around $385 million to near $400 million, an increase of only 14%. Again, this is because of the tax structure and how the tax structure is different when you have to tax slot machines and table games separately. It makes it harder for you to reach those higher tax rates because it accumulates at a smaller basis. We got two separate categories. So that's why you have such low revenue amounts in there, which is often surprising to people. Overall, after you include the local tax revenue increase, total revenues, we estimate around $74.5 million. Now, these are recurring revenues. There's also a lot of one-time revenues that would come in, whether it be from the Chicago Casino Management Contract, one-time license fees, position fees, application fees, and a major part would come from the reconciliation payments that we estimate around $624 million. But just keep in mind that those reconciliation payments would not come in till 2 to 3 years after the casinos come under full implementation. So it could be 5, 6, 7 years before you would see that one-time revenue. We'll skip down to page 16. This is, again, an overview the representative provided of the difference between the engrossed bill and Senate Bill 7. In terms of the tax revenues, which is always our focus here at the Commission, is what are the major changes that would affect tax revenues? There are a few, mainly from video gaming. Video gaming tax is increased under this bill from a flat rate of 30% to a flat rate of 35%. Also, the video gaming terminal limit is increased from 5 to 6 terminals. The other change that would have a significant impact on revenues would be that table games would now be added to the racinos instead of the racinos having only slot machines. With all of that in mind, below on page 17 is what our estimate would look like. The AGR really stays very similar, but the state revenues would increase in large part because of the video gaming tax changes. We estimate that the video gaming tax changes would bring in an additional $125 million. So you're looking at this recurring revenue estimate to be around $200 million. The one-time revenues would just change very slightly under the House Amendment 3. As Clayton had said, we were also asked to look at an alternative scenario. What if we kept the tax rates the way it is under current law? And then what if we left the terminals at a 5 instead of increasing them to 6? But then let's keep the tax rate at 35% as was proposed under the amendment. When we do this, we see on page 19 that numbers would increase by $217 million more than House Amendment 3. The increase was mainly due to a $267 million increase just caused by keeping the tax rates the same as they are under current law. There would be a $50 million reduction when you lower the limit for the terminals back down to 5, which it is under current law. Let's go to page 20. In our estimate, we've provided before, we have been told that maybe our estimate may be a little too low, especially as it pertains to the Chicago Casino. We have an AGR for the Chicago Casino in this bill about $500 million. And admittedly, that is maybe a little conservative, but I want you to understand why we are a little conservative in this particular estimate. Even with a $500 million Chicago casino, it would be the 4th largest revenue-producing casino in the Great Lakes region. If you look at the table below on page 21, I've included all the AGR statistics of the casinos in what I call the Great Lakes region, which would include Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, and 2 of the biggest changes in gaming lately is from Ohio and Pennsylvania. So of all those, we only have 3 casinos that are actually above $500 million currently, 1 in Detroit and 2 in Pennsylvania. The Chicago casino, even with the $500 million casino, would happen at the same time that you already have 5,800 gaming positions at the 5 Illinois casinos. You have 8,257 positions at the 5 Indiana casinos. You have nearly over 11,000 video gaming establishments. And this is at the same time that you would add 3,200 gaming positions at the casinos in the north and south suburbs. You would have at least 2,000 gaming positions at the 2 racetracks in this metropolitan area, with potentially more if a new racetrack were to come on board. And that doesn't count into the additional positions that may be added to a casino like Des Plaines if they choose to add them. It's just a lot of gaming that would occur, and it makes us skeptical to increase our estimate much farther than $500 million. Turn to page 22. This is current statistics. I looked at the AGR and for every metropolitan area combined. And Las Vegas is, of course, the highest revenue-producing metropolitan area with nearly $10 billion. But currently, Chicago, and when you're talking about state casinos, they're already in second, above Atlantic City at $2.5 billion. Atlantic City is at $2.4 billion. And then you see the cities of Detroit and Philadelphia at $1.4 and $1.2 billion. The AGR per capita, we won't include Las Vegas and Atlantic City here because they're just a different animal because that's the gaming destinations. But you can see that Chicagoland currently has AGR per capita of 264, Detroit 326, Philadelphia 205, St. Louis 358. Under this estimate that we have included in here, this would bring our numbers to around $3.1 billion in the Chicago region, which would be above the AGR per capita of most of these communities that I just mentioned. If you were to get to St. Louis's AGR per capita figure of 358, would mean that the Chicago region would have to go to 3.4 million, or excuse me, 3.4 billion. What would that mean? That would mean Chicago casino could go up to $700 million. So do I think that's plausible? Yeah, I do think that's plausible. But I think if you have money that's going into Chicago, yes, you're going to get it from tourists who would probably not go to the other locations. But you would get a lot of that money from the current locations. So I think if you increased it to $700 million, that kind of size of the casino, I have a feeling that it's going to be more of a detrimental impact on the current facilities because there's only so much money that's out there available to be spent. What kind of revenue would you get if it increased from $500 to $600 million? Again, under the tax structure that's included in here, a 20% tax would be on the AGR between 350 and 800 million. So that's going to only bring in $20 million for every 100 million increase above 500. So if it grows to 700 million, then you would have additional $40 million in tax revenues. I know I got a lot of statistics I'm throwing at you, so I'll try to go through the rest of this really fast. Page 24 and 25 just again another statistics regarding casino gaming throughout the nation. The bottom line here is in the table on page 25, the average growth in the last 5 years is just 0.6 nationwide. So it's not an area where you've seen a lot of increase in gaming. I think at one point you did, maybe 10, 15 years ago, but that has slowed. It seems that people's discretionary spending seems to be going in other places. But I will point out, in 2017, we did have an increase of 2.3% nationwide, so maybe that's a positive trend going the other direction. The final statistics on page 26 is Illinois casinos on a per boat basis. It just gives you some background information. The one thing I will point out there is you can see the 5-year change of Illinois casinos on a boat-by-boat basis. The Des Plaines casino has been up 6.9% over the last 5 years, but every other casino in Illinois has had double-digit losses and combined a 13.1% decline. Indiana casinos is below on page 27. In the last 5 years, they have dropped 13.7%. Again, I really feel that video gaming in Illinois is a big part of that reason. And then 28, you have some Missouri statistics, and 29, some Iowa statistics for your viewing pleasure. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. I'll start, and then if other members have questions, they can feel free to dive in. Eric, big picture takeaway. Senate Bill 7, as amended by House Amendment 3, versus natural growth of gaming as you describe it in the slide, one of the slides. What's the difference there? If we were to adopt and pass House Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 7 versus the natural growth you just described in gaming over the last 5 years, what's the difference in those two numbers?
Yeah, on page 17, the 1.382 billion that I would estimate as a current estimate, that pretty much is a flat estimate compared to where we are from current law. With this Amendment 3, we expect AGR to increase to 2.4, so that's an increase of over $1 billion. I don't have the calculation percentage-wise. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
what's the raw number? there. And again,
The 2.468 billion it would be the total AGR statewide that we would see after House Amendment 3. And that's in terms of adjusted gross receipts. In terms of total tax revenues, you go over to the right, that would be the 539.6 million in recurring revenues. That's what we would say.
so I guess the answer to my question is, if we were to adopt House Amendment number 3 to the bill, we would see an additional 539 million over the natural growth.
I'm sorry, the 539 would be after everything is done. That would be the total revenues. That's compared to the 466 under current law. So the
okay.
increase would be 73.6 in terms of casino revenues. Now you add the 125 million from video gaming, so our overall impact is nearly $200 million in recurring revenues.
Okay. I might get back to that in a second. I do have a question about methodology. You said that I think anecdotally, we're consistently told that people are going to Indiana to gamble in casinos, but that you sort of dispel that by saying with the addition of EGTs, that trend is actually reversed. Am I getting that right?
I think that looking at the amount of AGR that they get in Indiana compared to Illinois, we're still very close. And we all know the population mainly relies on Illinois. So there are still a lot of Illinois residents that I would assume are still going over to Indiana. But I don't think they're going over near as much as they used to because you're seeing the declining revenues at the Indiana casinos.
How do you know that?
I guess I don't, except for looking at the number of positions that they offer. I think that would show how their marketplace is changing. And looking at the fall off, if we look back on page 27, I can look at the Indiana casinos on a boat-by-boat basis. You can see the ones that are marked with an asterisk under the region, and I can show you there's some decreases. Now, there's decreases everywhere, not only in the ones that are near the Chicago metropolitan area, but in particular, there's the ones that were near a Cincinnati, Ohio casino that just came on board. They've seen decrease of around 50% for one of the boats in Lawrenceburg. The East Chicago boat has declined 10% over the last 5 years. The one in Michigan City, down 12%. The one in Hammond, that's their largest boat with over nearly 3,000 positions. That has declined 18% over the last 5 years. So to answer your question, I don't know for sure that it's because of video gaming, but it would just, the numbers seem to suggest that there's something that's happened over the last 5 years, and it's happened at the same time that video gaming come on board. So it's our assumption that that's probably what's occurring.
So one last question, and then I'll ask other members if they want to answer. If we added a Chicago casino, how would you reconcile the idea that maybe VGT players would instead gamble at a Chicago casino as opposed to, so would the cannibalization effect that you just described potentially redirect itself to a Chicago casino? And if that is possible, how would it affect your projections on what you have for the Chicago casino?
In terms of video gaming?
So my question is, you state, well, based on the decreased play in Indiana casinos, I think that it's because we added VGTs.
Yeah.
My question is, if we added a Chicago casino, how would that re-scramble the eggs and create, and are you able to estimate that? And if so, do you have any idea of what it would do?
I would think that if we're adding $1 billion to the state by doing this, that it has to come from somewhere. And that could be new people have never gambled before. But I think a large portion would probably come from those that are maybe in Indiana now that would come over to Illinois. The other advantage that Chicago has is that there's no video gaming terminals in the city of Chicago currently. So you may say there's an untapped area for gamblers in the city of Chicago. Again, tourists probably would not go outside to the video gaming establishments outside of this. They would be there. So you get new numbers in there. How that's going to be split, where that number is going to come from, I'm not sure.
Okay. Questions from other members of the committee? Representative Harris? Oh, I have to read in a letter. We have a letter from Leader Durkin replacing permanent member Stewart with temporary Wheeler. Representative Wheeler is on the roll. Spokesperson Harris for a question.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the things that caught my eye in your report was, well, the amount of total new recurring revenues. And it caught my eye for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are increasing, should this bill become law, we are increasing casino
Spokesperson
positions.
Harris, just 1 second.
Sure.
Representative Evans in the chair for a moment.
I'm sorry, please continue.
Okay, we are increasing casino positions, gaming positions by 21,000, which is about a 57% increase in casino positions. So the thought went through my mind, if we're bringing in $380 million now with the gaming positions we have, the 12,000 gaming positions that we have, boy, that's great. We're going to bring in so much more because we've got a 21,000 increase in gaming positions. But under this bill, as I see it, and as you've laid it out, and I just want to make sure this is in the record, that's not the case.
No.
Of the total new recurring revenues, which you put at 198.6, let's say it's, well, $198.6 million. Of those new recurring revenues, 82 million are to local entities.
Correct.
That brings us down to 116 million on recurring revenues. And of that 116 million of recurring revenues, 104 comes from video gaming,
That's correct.
not from casinos, rather from video gaming, which we've increased or would increase the tax from 30 to 35%. So we're adding 21,000 new casino gaming positions, a 57% increase, yet we're, on your estimate, we're only bringing in $12 million more from casinos?
That's correct, and it's not a popular thing for us at the commission to say, and it comes across as if we're trying to squash this, and it's not. It's just the math behind it. Again, we are adding over $1 billion of adjusted gross receipts to our estimate, but the mathematics behind it shows that it's only going to increase recurring revenues from the casinos by a very small amount because of the change in the tax structures that you're doing.
Well, that was going to be my next observation. Obviously, we're raising the tax on video display terminals. We are lowering the tax on casinos. So I'm not sure who in the panel that question, or future panels, that question should be directed to. But as someone who kind of looks at the numbers of state revenue, I would hope that we would be able to bring in more than $12 million in terms of new recurring revenue. Now, I understand there's the reconciliation process 2 or 3 years down the line, which may yield potentially $600, $700 million. But in terms of recurring revenues, it's not a big increase at all.
No.
Okay. All right. And then lastly, in the analysis that you put out on May 18th, there's a chart which is not in here where you talk about the Chicago casinos, or a Chicago casino. And the commission estimate for, let's use your lower estimate of $500 million for the AGR for a Chicago casino. You talk about tax revenue, which would flow to the state of $150 million. Is that correct?
I think that sounds right.
And then after-tax revenue, which you, in parentheses, say would be retained by the city of Chicago. So of the $500 million adjusted gross receipts, tax revenue 150, after-tax revenue retained by the city of Chicago of $350 million. So the city of Chicago gets to retain all of that after-tax revenue.
That's my understanding. And then they would be set up different than the other casinos. But the after-tax revenues of the Chicago casino and the gaming board, or somebody could correct me if I'm not exactly right on that. But that's my understanding, that they would get a big portion of that after-tax revenue.
Okay, I'll pursue that with some of the other panelists, but thank you very much for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Evans, and then I have a follow-up.
Again, thank you for all your work. Just a quick question, kind of staying talking about the Detroit casino. I see here that they're on page 21, the MGM Grand in Detroit. I think the AGR was 566. Understanding that Chicago, I mean, we're a bustling city, the second busiest airport, in the world. It'd be probably your position or your opinion that a Chicago casino would be less lucrative or equally lucrative to a casino in Detroit. It's just kind of, what's your input on that?
It just depends on the amount of competition that is already existing in Chicago compared to Detroit. I think there are, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 3 major casinos in Detroit. One bringing in $592 million in calendar year 2017. One bringing in $329 million, and I don't have the other one listed here. But and I think there's maybe some casino competition on the Canadian side of the border as well. But the amount of competition that in Illinois, at least in the Chicago metropolitan area, there seems to be more than what's in Detroit. And so because there's more competition, you have the video gaming, it seems to me that it would be harder to reach those kind of levels when you have all of that competition already in place here in the Chicago metropolitan area.
And just lastly, I look forward to us closing down all of the Indiana casinos. I mean, we could, my district borders Indiana, so if we could, we can close every Indiana casino, I'll be happy with that and keep folks on the Illinois side. So and it's kind of your view that Illinois can't come up with a strategy that would make, gaming to the point where people would come here, because in my view, people tend to go to newer, kind of more exciting things, whether it not be us working with tourism, coming up with strategies to get those folks to stay on the Illinois side and get Indiana. So, what's your input on that?
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. People do flock to whatever's new.
Yeah.
But I think video gaming has brought another component to that. That is, a lot of people don't like crowds. And you can go to a little small establishment, and again, there's only 5 terminals per location. Some people like that kind of setting. They don't want to go to the big things, and that's what video gaming is providing. And maybe video gaming is providing a way for those people that have been going over to Indiana to stay over in Illinois. If you put a new casino in the south suburbs that's newer, right next to the Hammond location or something like that, I have a feeling that there would be a lot that flock back over to Illinois. You may get some Indiana residents going over there. Again, people like newer. But the problem was, because people like newer, it's also going to affect the existing casinos in Illinois as well. So which is going to have an offsetting impact? It's hard to say.
Just lastly, do you see a revenue number that could be obtained by any new components, whether it's new video gaming or new casino, that say the best case scenario, this new casino could get this amount of revenue that could still work out or kind of yield the result that we're looking for, like a best case scenario?
I don't know if I can speak to that, except for in terms of tax revenues, the most money that you can put in one pot when you're talking about a graduated tax structure, that's going to bring in the most tax revenues. So if you had a mega casino, which had very little competition, you're going to get a lot of tax revenue because that money's going to accumulate, and if you kept the tax rate the same as it is, that's going to bring in a lot of tax revenues. But if you're talking, if in the viewpoint of jobs, if you want a casino in the south suburbs or one in Danville or whatever, that's not going to provide jobs if everything's located in one facility. So I understand that. One casino in Chicago is not going to help the horse racing industry necessarily. And so it just depends on the viewpoint that you come from, where it's going to help and what would be the best.
Thank you.
Eric, I have one follow-up, and then we'll get you guys on your way. Can you reconcile for me the difference in what you'll see as cannibalization of Senate Bill 7, House Amendment number 3, versus what you'll consider new players coming into the system in Senate Bill 7, House Amendment number 3? To the extent you can, do you have a sense of how many dollars that would represent and/or how many players that would represent based on the data you've reviewed?
Again, as compared to current law, or as compared to the engrossed bill?
As compared to the engrossed bill?
I would have to think about that and to try to quantify that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a difference in terms of revenue, but again, most of that revenue is coming from establishing a higher tax rate on video gaming. When you're looking at the difference between engrossed bill and House Amendment 3, that's where much of the new tax revenue is coming from. But from the standpoint of new players, I don't think it's going to add a lot between the House Amendment 3 and the gross bill. I think the racinos would offer table games where they didn't before. Maybe that's going to bring in some additional money. There's potential of a new racetrack that could bring in money. I don't know if I have numbers here that we could quantify that currently, but I can definitely look into that.
Would you be able to better predict if it was as compared to current law? Do you have a sense?
Again, it comes down to the adjusted gross receipts. We say over $1 billion, and I mean, that's a lot of revenue. I mean, how that is in terms of the number of people, I don't have that necessarily in front of me.
Would you say, is it fair to characterize your testimony saying the $1 billion represents new players as opposed to cannibalization?
Yes, it would be new
Okay.
overall dollars, including the impact of cannibalization that is accounted for in that number. So that's
Okay.
$1 billion in new money.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated. The next panel will be the City of Chicago, Victoria Watkins and Derek Blada, along with, I think Sydney's testifying for the county. Is that accurate? Maybe not. Is the attorney for the county testifying for the county? Joe Clary. I hear people saying stuff, but I'm not sure who it is. Come on up, gentlemen. So we'll start with the city, Victoria and Derek. The floor is yours. As I said at the outset, you guys are all pros at this, but to the extent you can, just distill what you have to say. We can always accept written testimony, and then we'll go to the county.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. My name is Victoria Watkins, and I am Senior Advisor to Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. As you know, in the past, the city has supported proposals on gaming expansion similar to the ones that we are discussing today. Some of the components of those recent casino bills have included allowing the city of Chicago to hold a publicly owned and irrevocable casino license that would allow it to offer gaming as a means for complementing the thriving tourism and entertainment industry in the city. It would require the facility to be overseen by the Chicago Casino Development Authority, whose members would be appointed by the mayor and approved by the Illinois Gaming Board. It would also require the Chicago Casino Development Authority to conduct a competitive sealed bid process to award all contracts and as well as to a private casino operator licensee who would develop, construct, operate, and manage the facility on behalf of the gaming authority. We have supported providing the Chicago Casino Development Authority with the ability to issue bonds for land acquisition, site assembly and preparation, and also for casino design and construction, and also mandating public posting and disclosure for transparency purposes on each and every contract that was offered for bid and on an appropriate employment opportunities for veterans and other specific groups. Additionally, since the previous casino expansion bills discussed about 5 years ago, whenever a comprehensive gaming expansion proposal is put forth, there are usually like 4 main factors that the city considers in trying to figure out what is best fit for us. Some of these are items that came up in the COGPA presentation, but we asked whether a casino bill will maximize employment and economic development to provide sustainable revenues to help support neighborhood programs and initiatives. We also ask if a gaming expansion bill will allow the Chicago casino to provide growing and recurring revenue to fund commitments found in state law, whether expansion will allow us to attract and select the best casino operator that will partner with the gaming authority to grow future operations while being asked to pay the same tax rates that private casino holders in the area would be asked to pay under the previous amendment. And we also asked whether a publicly owned Chicago casino can be successful if thousands of video gaming terminals have been added throughout the Chicago metropolitan area in the last several years. Earlier this year, House Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 7 was considered, and it had many components to be supported. However, we did oppose the amendment when it was in the House Gaming Subcommittee at the end of May. Sort of based on our 4-factor test and largely because of the large gaming fee of $30,000 per position. Assuming that all 4,000 positions offered to the city in the bill were put into operation, this would require payment of a $120 million gaming position fee. And we would assume that that fee would be paid by a casino manager who would fund pre-gaming operational costs. The same fee amount is proposed for other casino licenses in the northeastern Illinois area, but those casinos would not be publicly owned. Based on the per position fee, the proposed reconciliation payments, and costs associated with opening the facility, it seems likely to us that it may not be financially feasible under those specific conditions for a successful Chicago casino. Also, potential casino financing is further exacerbated by land acquisition, environmental and transportation costs, as well as other necessary expenditures before any temporary or permanent casino could be constructed or operated. Considering the amendment's initial gaming fee, subsequent reconciliation payments, and comprising the total licensing fee, this would be the highest gaming establishment cost in the country. These combined payments have to continue to be analyzed under the current market of gaming conditions around this region, which is very different than what we were analyzing a few years ago when the last 2 gaming bills were vetoed. Today, as you know, there are 10 operating casinos across the state, but there are also 29,000 video gaming terminals, many or all of which are legally in operation, but there are also some that are in illegal operation as well. The 29,000 plus terminals roughly equates to about an additional 24 operating casinos, and proposed casinos at Cook County racetracks would stand to increase that number as well. So as it relates to Senate Bill 7, we can support video gaming at racetracks on dates when live racing is conducted on site. However, we would oppose attempts to permit video and table games at dormant racetracks and any attempts at gaming expansion outside of the traditional legislative process. I think that is all. I appreciate you letting me testify today, and happy to take any questions.
Mr. Blada.
Chairman, I'm happy to waive my time. I'm interested in the county's position. Happy to answer questions after that.
Mr. Cleary, and I don't know the gentleman to your left, so go right ahead. I think you need to put your microphone
There we got
on.
it.
There you go.
Good morning, Chairman Rita and Chairman Zielinski and members of the House Gaming and Revenue Committees. My name is Amar Risky. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Cook County. We appear today to call your attention to some of our concerns associated with House Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 7. and respectfully request that these be resolved before further action is taken on the related legislation. The proposed legislation does not include any tax revenue for the county from both the proposed Chicago casino and apparently from the casino proposed in the South Suburban Cook County. Under current gambling statutes, the county receives a share of revenue from casino operations that are located in the county. This helps the county defray the cost of associated with our public safety and public health operations. Additionally, it also appears that the legislation would prohibit the county from regulating gambling licenses under its current home rule authority. We are grateful for today's inquiry and appreciate working with Chairman Rita and staff as it allows us to bring these concerns to your attention and look forward to continue working on a mutually beneficial legislation. I thank you for your attention and am pleased to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Mr. Clare, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add at this point. Thank you.
So can you just describe for me, you said there's an explicit prohibition against the county regulating gambling in Senate Bill 7, House Amendment number 3. Did I understand that testimony correctly?
Correct. As it appears, there's language in there that prohibits us from there that is ambiguous. So that's why we wanted to bring that to your attention, that we'd like to work with the staff to work on that legislation.
What's the nature of the ambiguity?
I'm going to ask Joe Clary to speak to that, please.
So my understanding is that the current draft has some language that would preempt home rule authorities, including the county, from in any way regulating licensees of gambling.
Okay. Is that new language or has that always been on the books that you guys just conceptually disagree with preemption of home rule?
I would have to look at the analysis to see if it's new language. My recollection is that it is modifying current language, and we do have as you say, a conceptual opposition to that, to the degree that any operation does affect the county. We would almost invariably object to any restriction on home rule authority.
So if there were no home rule preemption in the law, what would the county's prospective policy be on regulating gambling? I mean, in other words, if we took that out, what would you want to do to it?
So we oppose to any element where it restricts our authority. So right now, in the current statutes, we don't have that preemption. So we would expect to keep that language consistently in terms of how it's currently laid out.
Well, yeah, I mean, just respectfully, I think I guess my question is, if we've always preempted home rule on this, is there anything specifically you're looking to do with respect to gambling that you'd like the committee to know about?
So specifically, the revenue portion is the bigger concern in terms of how the current legislation is proposed. We currently receive 2% roughly of the gross receipts from the current casino operations that do operate in Cook County, predominantly the Rivers Casino and Des Plaines. And as I mentioned in my testimony, that does help defray the cost of public safety and public health that the services the county provides. With this legislation, we would expect to be at par with that, allowing us to, again, benefit from any additional revenue that would again go towards those same operations. So that is the primary concern there.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for the county or the city from other members of the committee? Representative Harris.
Mr. Chairman, was that me?
Oh, you didn't have any questions, Representative? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know. Great. Just a couple of questions. One, first to the county. The 2% that you indicate you get now from casino gaming, how does that flow to you? Where does that come from?
It comes from the Illinois Gaming Board, collects that on behalf of the county and then remits it to us subsequently.
And help me understand the flow of dollars. So the gaming board, it's my understanding that that the tax receipts go into general revenue now. Is that,
Yeah, you're correct about that. I think the current statute requires the remission of 2% to the county subject to appropriation. So I think you're right that it gets into the general fund and then gets
and
appropriated.
then gets distributed from the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. That makes clear sense. And there are now, though, just since we're on this subject, this bill would create 3 separate funds so that the money wouldn't, the tax receipts no longer would flow into GRF, but would have the Pension Stabilization Fund. There are 2 others that also are created. I understand that. If I can, I'd like to turn to the city of Chicago for a second, and let me, by way of full disclosure, say that I have always supported a casino in the city of Chicago. I think it makes sense that for a major metropolitan area like Chicago to have casino gaming throughout the rest of the state and not have it in Chicago. I've never been able to fully understand that. But having said that, the control of that casino and the operation of that casino, I want to dig into a little bit. So we are creating a Chicago Casino Gaming Authority, correct? Why is it necessary to have a separate Chicago Casino Gaming Authority, or Chicago Casino Development Authority, excuse me, when we have the Illinois Gaming Board?
The reason for the separate gaming authority would be because the Chicago Casino would be publicly owned. It would be privately managed and operated, but it would be owned by the city of Chicago. So the Casino Gaming Authority would be kind of the go-between between the Illinois Gaming Board and the operator.
Well, the fact of its ownership, I'm not sure of the fact of its ownership, to me, should negate the oversight, the full oversight by the Illinois Gaming Board, just my observation. So the Development Authority is governed by a 5-member board.
Yes.
That 5-member board is appointed by the mayor.
Yes.
Completely by the mayor. They have to
Yes.
be screened by the Illinois Gaming Board, but they're
That's correct.
appointed strictly by the mayor. And I believe for certain terms, length of terms, correct?
If I recall, they are 3-year staggered terms.
But I believe I read they serve at the pleasure of the mayor. Is that correct?
It's my recollection, sir, they could be removed at any time.
So if, not that there's going to be, but should it be created and sometime in the future there's a new mayor and the new mayor doesn't like the gaming board, that new mayor can simply say, well, I don't like you, so you're off the board. Seems sort of total control from the mayor, which, you know, I might have a concern with. Talk to me a second about again, the oversight. It was my analysis says that the license shall be granted by the Chicago Casino Board, not the IGB, not the Gaming Board. It's granted by the board. Is that correct? The Chicago. Okay.
It's my recollection the license would be granted from the Illinois Gaming Board to the Chicago Casino Development Authority.
Okay, so the Development Authority, but it comes down through the Gaming Board. Now, it says with respect to any disputes with respect to the Illinois Gaming Board, that in any conflict between the Chicago Casino Development Authority and the Illinois Gaming Board, the Chicago Act shall prevail. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
So if the Chicago Act prevails, it seems to me that, yes, there's an association with the Gaming Board, but I don't see full regulation by the Illinois Gaming Board. I mean, Chicago is the paramount decider here of what happens. And I mention that because, again, I think you should have a casino. I just question whether or not how it should be controlled.
Mr. Blady, Representative Harris, I hate to just interrupt, but it sounded like Mr. Blady wanted to respond to
Just
that.
for clarification purposes, sir, it's my recollection, unfortunately, I don't have the bill in front of me. The Illinois Gaming Board would still control oversight over everything on the gaming floor itself. The Gaming Board would have, obviously, the opportunity to vet members of the Casino Development Authority and continue participation in an active manner with the authority members themselves. I don't believe, and obviously if the language is vague, obviously I don't believe there's any There's not an unwillingness to discuss, but I would characterize the Illinois Gaming Board as an active participant in obviously oversight of all gaming activities in the state of Illinois, including a Chicago casino.
And fair enough, and that's why we're having the hearing, to
Yes, sir.
to talk about issues like this and see if there are amendments or modifications that might be needed to the legislation. I look at this and I say, that's total control by the city of Chicago, and in particular by the mayor, because of the appointment process and because of the ultimate resolution process. Talk to me a second about I believe it's a sort of a private-public partnership that has to occur for the casino license to be granted. Is that correct? And I believe there has to be a labor-friendly organization involved. Is that right? Or some sort of labor peace agreement that has to be in place? Do I understand that correctly? I will tell you that there's somebody in the audience who's going like this, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, the labor peace agreement portion, I'm not certain about that. I don't think that was in there, and we always like labor peace, so that's something that we would be, interested in having generally anyway. But as far as the public-private partnership, as mentioned, the casino itself would be owned by the city, but it would be operated by a casino manager. So, for example, MGM, Harris, I don't gamble, so I'm.
The reason
sorry.
Feel free to respond. The reason I bring up the labor peace agreement is that I don't want to disadvantage. I mean, I recall recently there was a threatened strike, as an example, out in Las Vegas. Yes. By casino workers because they felt they weren't being paid enough, the working conditions weren't right. I don't know what the basis for the potential strike was, but my point is, I don't want to allow those individuals that might work in a casino in Chicago not to have the same sorts of rights that they would have if they were working elsewhere under a normal labor contract, and that's why I question the labor peace agreement, what that really means. Last question I have is, in the legislation, the firm that's selected for the operation of the casino has to pay an upfront fee of $50 million, is that correct?
That is my recollection.
And for each gaming position throughout the state, for each gaming position throughout Cook County, for any new casinos that operate, or let me back up, for any new positions that are put into Cook County, the fee is $30,000 per position, correct?
Yes.
Does that mean that Chicago would also have to chip in $120 million for those 4,000 gaming positions?
Technically, the answer is no, under the provisions of the bill, because it is managed by a body politique, the Chicago Casino Gaming Authority. The issue we would suggest that may occur if the bill, like this, was signed into law, the question is who would pay the $120 million per position per fee. We believe the assumption must be made because of the dollars and cents, the amount alone, that fee must be advanced, if you will, by a casino manager that is selected to run operations, site locations, so on and so forth for the casino itself. One of the factors that we believe disadvantages Chicago Casino under the provisions of House Amendment number 3. It's an issue that we believe we have to talk about, but it's an issue that we believe on which the assumption must be made. Obviously, the city of Chicago would not be responsible for the fee under the bill. Someone would obviously have to cut the check. We believe the only option here under the provisions of the current law, under House Amendment number 3, would be an advance by the manager itself.
Well, wouldn't somebody, I mean, if a casino starts in Waukegan or Danville or Southern Cook County, somebody's going to have to cut the check for those $30,000 per gaming position. Presumably, it's a private operator who's going to have to cut that check. I'm not sure I see the difference between that and the city of Chicago, or that operator in the city of Chicago having to cut the check.
$30,000 per position suggested in the bill in Cook County, to $17,500
downstate, right.
Downstate. We believe the difference is the public versus the private ownership. The issue, of course, because you are looking at not a private owner who can rely on previous capital, previous investments, other diversification of firm or management revenue, if you will. We believe it is substantially easier for those individual managers to pay the per position fee, whether it's 30,000 or 17.5 or whatever number ends up in an amendment that is advanced through the legislative process. Because of the publicly owned method, because of the creation of the authority that would have jurisdiction of management, site selection, so on and so forth, because it is not a city of Chicago proper operation under the authority, under the provisions of the language, we believe the only option here that could possibly make sense before obviously gaming could commence is an advancement through the private operator or management.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Fair enough, of course.
I'm not convinced, I understand, and I won't belabor it. And quite frankly, depending on when the bill's voted on, I may not be there to vote on it anyway. But it does seem here like there is a significant carve-out for the city of Chicago, which is not unusual in the state of Illinois, but I think that's something which does need to be looked at. And then the last question I'll ask you, the same question I asked COGFA, were Chicago to get a casino and were it to generate $500 million in adjusted gross income, and the tax revenue on that would estimate to be $150 million, is it your understanding that the remaining $350 million would be kept by the city versus going into those three funds that are set up?
Before I answer your specific question, I would have to respectfully disagree with revenue projections for a Chicago casino.
Too high or too low?
I believe the estimates that you heard are too high.
Oh, really?
I also believe that the provisions of a bill, I believe it was Senate Bill 777, a pension bill that was passed, I believe with your support, so thank you very, very much, would direct the first substantial amount of revenue from a Chicago casino into Chicago's police and fire pension funds for employer pension contributions. So a substantial amount of dollars generated through a Chicago casino are already spoken for under current law that was codified years ago. Those dollars would be directed in Chicago police and fire pension funds.
Well, isn't that the provision under, isn't that the arrangement under this bill as well?
Yes.
Doesn't it have to go, they have
Yes.
to go to the pension fund.
That's
But
right.
the question is, that does Chicago get to keep that $350 million? Does that flow to the city of Chicago or to the Development Authority?
I don't believe.
It would flow to the pension fund in this
Yes.
case, because but that full 350 is kept by the city.
If we're making the assumption it's at the 350 number.
If it were $500 million. Just out of curiosity, you thought it was too high. Do you have an
Yes.
estimate of what you think AGR might be from your calculations?
It's an exceptionally fair question with an exceptionally loaded response, sir. And not being intentionally vague, but since the last time we advanced a gaming bill through the legislative process, one that was vetoed a few years ago, there were not 11,000 video gaming terminals operating in the Chicago metropolitan area. There is not a proposal to add hundreds of additional machines at active racetracks within the county. There are not machines operating, I would suggest, within the city of Chicago and in the surrounding area that may not completely be in line with current state law. And there definitely was not a proposal that I believe, will make its way to JCAR to advance historical horse racing at our active tracks without an act of the legislature today. Those prongs, depending on revenue estimates there, depending on participation, depending on how many individuals will remain in the state of Illinois as opposed to go to Hammond or Gary or Michigan City, until we solve for those, I have no choice except to be vague because I would never mislead the committee. We believe the number is high, unfortunately, because of those aforementioned factors.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you for your complete
sir.
answers.
Of course.
Any other questions? Thank you. Panel 3.
Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go to panel 4, Fairmont, Hawthorne, and Arlington. Come on up. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll let you guys decide who wants to go first. Just identify yourselves for the record And as we've reminded everybody, to the extent you can, please keep your remarks brief. Your microphone on, sir.
There we go. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate this opportunity to speak before you today, and we'd like to acknowledge Representative Rita for advancing this gaming bill with table games for the racetracks, as well as the members of the Latino caucus that have supported table games at the racetrack. We've appeared before various committees and before a number of different entities stating the dire strait of our industry. In the last 2 decades or a little bit more, wagering on horse racing in Illinois has decreased from $1.2 billion down to $586 million in 2017. For thoroughbred racing, though, that is contradicts the trend that we're seeing in the industry nationwide, where it's actually showing growth. It has grown in 1995 from $10.5 billion to $10.7 billion on a national scale in 2017. And the reason for this is that the racetracks, we don't have a competitive product that we're able to offer to be able to drive the revenues necessary to provide the long-term sustainability for the racetracks, along with the agribusiness that exists throughout the state. We see through, there's a group called the McKinsey Group that appeared before the Jockey Club this past August and had identified some growth within the industry, and we see that that growth is occurring in states where racetracks have been afforded the opportunity to operate with racinos with table games. This has provided the necessary revenue for the reinvestment in racing that brings in new products and new services to the industry, along with television marketing and advertising. And it's also increased the breeding industry within those states. Here in Illinois, there were about a decade ago about 30,000 jobs that existed within this industry, not just at the racetracks, but across the state as well at the farms where the breeding occurs. And in Illinois, that breeding occurs, or this economic activity and the agribusiness occurs from touching each one of the state borders, all the way from the far north to the far south, the east and the west. Some of the other states that have helped the racing industry by allowing them to compete has been Indiana, Iowa, Pennsylvania, California, New York, Louisiana, Ohio, Iowa, our neighboring state, Indiana, our neighboring state. As these trades have been able to invest their money in casino-type gaming, they have grown the industry not only with the breeding, but also with the product, also back to the reinvestment of the industry. And it has provided jobs across the state. And one of the, I guess you could say, one of the unique parts of our industry is that it doesn't require a ton of skill and craft to enter into this job market. Someone in this industry could start off on a very a basis of first-time entry into a job and then work their way up from grooms, hop walkers, exercise persons, and then all the way up to the most skilled positions of trainers, assistant trainers, and owners. We believe that the market here in Illinois will be able to sustain the additional gaming positions that are in Senate Bill 7 and House Amendment number 3. Our studies show that we'd move from about 40,000 positions to about 62,000 positions, and that wouldn't even move us up into the top rank of the top 10 in the country. So we would move from 232 gaming positions per adult to about 151 gaming positions per adult. So we believe that the market is not saturated and could sustain these additional positions at racetracks. In the last decade, 4 of the 7 racetracks have closed. It's been devastating to the industry. We've seen people move their businesses. The folks that own horses and train horses have moved their businesses into states such as Delaware, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Indiana, leaving their homes either abandoned or put them up for sale. And we're also losing those residents that pay taxes, as well as the tax dollars that are generated from their businesses here in the state. Just at Arlington alone, insofar as the benefits of a racino with table games, we would generate approximately $224 million in adjusted gross receipts with annual taxes of $36 million. This is just at Arlington alone, and pay one-time licensing fees of $131 million. We'd increase the number of jobs by 990 new jobs just at Arlington alone. The entire industry with the additional racetracks is about 3,100 jobs here in the state. That would provide an additional $36 million in tax revenue. And what is vital to our industry is called purse money, or the amount of money that owners compete for in an individual race. So it's local purse money. Right now, at Arlington, we give away about $13 million in purses, but a racino with table games would produce about $41 million in additional purses. That would allow us to be able to compete with Iowa, Indiana, and just want to mention that Indiana has slots at their racetracks currently, but in the year 2021, they get table games along with that. So we're looking in the future that the competition is going to become even more stiff, and vital to our industry is a racino at racetracks. One thing I do want to mention here is that there was some talk just a moment ago about operating in live racing only. Well, that, curtailing the hours of operations or the days of operations and limiting that, now allowing us to compete with other entities that operate 364 days a year, 20-some hours a day, that would not allow us to maintain a viable operation. That would shut our business down right away. So it's important that we have the ability to compete in this market. We have the ability to compete and have the same products that the casinos currently have and the casinos would have under this bill. And in order to provide and continue to allow our industry to grow, it's just a very vital bill to us. Again, 4 of the 7 tracks have closed, and we don't know how much longer any of the remaining tracks will be able to sustain the operation, incurring the significant losses that we do each year.
Mr. Petrillo, who said that you guys should only operate during live racing?
I think the witness from Chicago suggested that the racetracks only be allowed to operate during live racing.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt. Mr. Carey, are you next on the docket?
Well, I don't know if he's done.
Are you done, Mr. Petrillo?
Unless there are any questions.
Okay, we'll get to questions after the panel.
Tim Carey from Hawthorne Racecourse. Very simply, we've been at this for a long, long time. We've been trying to be a part of the gaming bill and pass the gaming bill for 12, 15 years, whatever it's been now. Tony brings up all the correct points. I would just add that at one point in time, we were number 4 in the country as far as thoroughbred racing. We're probably number 26th or 28th right now. And there's no reason other than the competition that surrounds us. We don't have the purse dollars to compete on a level playing field. And so what this bill does is bring this industry back to where it can possibly be. And we have all the horsemen, and everyone would like to come back to Illinois. It just doesn't make financial sense for them to do that at this point in time because we don't have the purse structure to do it. So please, we're looking for your support to help revitalize our industry that so desperately needs it.
Mr. Malero.
I'll be brief. As you saw, Chairman Rita left when he saw that I was next up, so goes to show you how many times he's heard the story. So we'll stop all of that. But for the older, newer members, I should say, 1989 or 90, we passed the casino legislation. And obviously nobody knew what it was going to be, what the impact was. The horse racing industry thought, who the heck's going to go to Elgin or Aurora to Joliet to gamble? They might not even make money. How wrong we were. And it was a big-time negative impact. So here's what all the states and the rest of the country did. Now they're beginning to see that casino gaming, unfortunately, is here to stay, and they're going to put it in all these other states. So about 15 other states have now added casino gambling. But one of the things that they did, And and the legislators were smart, said, wait a second. You open up a new casino, you hire 80 people, 100 people, 200 people, depending how big the place is. And every casino that opens, whether it's a track or somewhere else, those are the kind of people you hired. But they said, wait a minute. We saw what's happening in Illinois and what those knuckleheads did when they didn't fight for the industry and they didn't see. So they said, we want to save our racing industry. So all these 10, 15, 20 states that have horse racing that introduced casino gaming said, wait a minute. When you hire, you get this, but when you put it at a racetrack, not only are you getting the same amount of people working the casino end of it, you're saving thousands and thousands of jobs. Agriculture, farmers, breeders, people who gave the feed, the veterinarians, truck drivers, union jobs, all the people that work at the racetrack part of it. And they said, if we're going to do anything in the state when we do casino gaming, we're going to make sure that that industry isn't negatively impacted, and we're going to give them casinos as some form of alternative revenue. They understood that. And when they did that, those states and their horse racing industry flourished. I don't know if any of you guys ever been to Arlington Park or Fairmount, where they have a great time, or out by Tim at Hawthorne, whose family ran. Hawthorne has run it for 100 years. On any attention of impropriety, 100 years the family's owned it. So it's a beautiful sport. Everybody recognizes it. Everybody recognizes it's from all over the state. There's people who have farms down near Cairo, all the way up here. It's a great industry. And every state fought to keep it, and that's exactly what they did. They first went to Illinois and say, let's use Illinois to make sure what we don't do. So they did it. Now we come back and say we need help, but all the other problems that come up with the casino bill, and it gets bigger, and every year it gets bigger, and this year is no different. So we haven't had it. So we go, as Tim said, from number 3 in the country to number 27. We cannot sustain it. It's impossible. It's impossible. You got people, and I don't want to call out people, but I'll give you the initials. Governor Edgar, right? I'll give you his initials. Edgar might have 20 or 30 horses. They're all in Indiana now. But you can't fault them. You have some horse that's the same class in Illinois. He's going to run for $8,000. In Indiana, they're running for $24,000. In Ohio now, they're running. How could you own a horse? If I own a horse, sorry, Tim and Tony, I'd probably have to go to Indiana, Ohio. We have no choice, and we're losing all the jobs that's there. So it's a no-brainer. If you're going to expand gaming and you're going to have a gaming bill, you have to include the racetracks. It's not only the jobs and the revenue, it's also the thousands of jobs that you're going to keep to an industry that has been part of this for 100 years. So I'm just asking that you keep that in mind as the bill moves forward, that the racetracks have to be included, and we have to be included, as Tony says, as a full partner with everyone. And I think Chicago, I think they were just kidding around when they mentioned that. It was just a suggestion. So we have to have the full casino. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Gaitis? Mike's not on, Senator.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Richard Gaitis. I represent Fairmount Racecourse, Southern Illinois. We're not going to offer any testimony today on this particular subject, wherein we fully support Senate Bill 7. Amendment 3 happens to have a very restrictive piece of language in there regarding us. Hopefully, this matter will be resolved when we'll hold our testimony until your October meeting in Springfield. So thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for that teaser, Mr. Gaitis. That's very exciting for this group today. Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions from members of the committee? Representative Harris.
Just very, very briefly, 2 observations and then a question. Mr. Malaro, your passion is evident, and my guess is you were standing right next to Zeke Georgie in 1989 when they passed the Riverboat Gaming Bill. You probably were. The other observation is, Mr. Petrillo, you mentioned that the number of gaming positions that Illinois could support. If we went to the with the 12,000 casino positions now, if we went to additional 21,000, that would bring us up to 33,000 gaming positions just in casinos. The latest report from the Illinois Gaming Board regarding video display terminals and those things have been growing almost exponentially every month. The latest report has them roughly at 30,000 VDTs around the state. So in essence, as of right now, we are looking at about 70,000 if you want to consider a gaming, VDT, a gaming position. And oh, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, slot machines only account for 0.9% of a gaming position. Is that correct? So
Yes.
we actually have more than 12,000. Is that right? Okay, just an observation, but I do have a question. We were just given and this is, you may or may not be able to address this, but I'd like to put it into the record. The committee was just given a statement from the Illinois Thoroughbred Horsemen's, Illinois Harness Horsemen's, and the Illinois Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, and they express a concern about the continued survival of Fairmount Park, and they reference what they call a poison pill language, and apparently that poison pill refers to that the Queen Casino, or the Casino Queen, and Fairmount, they have to come to an agreement before Fairmount can stay in operation, or what? You're shaking your head yes. What, can you explain that to me? What's the situation?
No, I can't explain it. That's what Mr. Gaitis is here for. But I know about it. That's why I was shaking my head.
Turn your mic on.
In answer to what you're asking about there has been some language, as I'm sure you're aware, that appears in Senate Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 7. House Amendment 3. And that language is restrictive, as I indicated in the first part of it. It is a detriment naturally to the free enterprise system as we know it. Consequently, we have that objection, and hopefully that this committee will resolve itself that there should be no restriction to treat Fairmount any other than any other track here.
So is that a general concern from the horse racing industry that Fairmount could be at risk?
Well, we would definitely be at risk.
Okay, so
yeah, because we would not be able to participate unless we made a contractual relationship with another entity.
And they would have control of it.
An entity that's specific.
Okay, so that's a concern to be raised. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And you asked another question, or you brought up a point. In 1989, I would just indicate to you that Fairmount Racecourse was the only one who opposed that legislation at that time. It was later resolved, and we did support it, but we did oppose it because of exactly the reasons that were mentioned here, that we thought it was going to be a major detriment to the horse industry, and of course that is what in fact has happened.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harris, I did calculate the number of additional gaming positions up to 70,000, and that would only move us from number 14 to number 11, and we're still below states, adults per machine, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Mississippi, West Virginia, Delaware, Iowa, and it moves us from 115 to, 151 to about 124 adults per machine.
Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank Representative Milaro and Mr. Petrillo for their impassioned defense of those of us in counties who don't have casinos but have relied upon a horse industry for quite a long time, like we do in Sangamon County, even though we have a lot of video terminals in Sangamon County. Mr. Petrillo, you had mentioned that I think you said Arlington currently has 13 million in purses and the potential to go up to 41 million in purses. Is that, did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
So tell me what that means for racing at Arlington. I mean, does that mean higher profile races? What does that mean when you raise the amount of purses that much?
We would be able to attract a higher quality of horse that results in a higher quality product that bettors have a tendency or have a higher propensity to wager on. It would also allow owners to come back to Illinois and reinvest money in Illinois-bred horses and reestablish their farms or expand their farms, which again leads to more economic activity in the agribusiness across the state. It would allow us to compete with our neighboring states in Indiana and Iowa for having those owners return back to the state and being able to return back to their homes here in Illinois.
So not only the jobs aspect of people moving back, but also higher purses mean more wagering on the races, right? So more revenues coming in through wagering on those races because they're better races.
Yes, if you have a higher quality horse, it becomes more predictable, and or they're able to find a bias to that horse. And just like any fan, you have a baseball team that wins the World Series, everybody follows them, and you have a team that's under 500 and no one really follows them. So we would follow along those same
I'm a Cubs
lines.
fan, I know that well.
I take great umbrage with that comparison as a Sox fan, sir. I just want
I was speaking of another state. I was talking about New York.
Go right ahead, sir.
Yankees and Mets.
I'm not going to make any cracks about the Sox. So, do you have any idea what the increase in wagering would be if it did go from 13 million purses to 41 million? How many?
It's hard to say what that actual increase would be, but where we see the most economic activity is the investments that the facilities put back into the industry to draw in new customers, and the investment of owners into the breeding industry. Again, it's hard to say, but you've seen 20-25% increases in other states.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated. We're going to do one more panel. We're going to do the mayor's panel number 5, and then we'll take a 5-minute break before we get to the second set. So, Mr. Mayors McNamara, Cunningham, Holfeld, and Eisenhower, if you could come up to the table. So, we'll start down the row. Is that okay? Mayor, we have listeners who are very interested in this topic, so I know who you are, and I know your zealous passion for this issue, but to the extent you can, if you could introduce yourself before you begin your testimony, that'd be much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Scott Eisenhower. I'm mayor of the city of Danville, a community of 33,000 people that want to thank Representative Rita and you, members of this committee, for keeping our jobs growth bill alive. And that's quite frankly what we're going to talk about. I know there are many here to testify today. I'll keep my comments short. Quite frankly, what we're looking at is a bill that for the city of Danville would create 600 construction jobs. Once the casino is open, that's another 650 jobs according to our market survey. And what that would bring about is $5 to $8 million of new revenue to a community that is in desperate need of funding for our public pensions, in desperate need of funding for our services that our citizens expect. And so that's why we're before you here today, once again, urging you to support a bill that includes Danville. I do want to touch on one subject that has been popular through the early part of the discussion today, and that is the fear of cannibalization. Danville, and I'm not sure if everyone knows where we're located, but we're 35 miles due east of Champaign-Urbana. That puts us right on the Illinois-Indiana state line. There is not another casino currently in existence or proposed within 2.5 hours of us, and that's going to the north and to the west. If you look to the south, you have to go all the way down to Metropolis before you find one that would compete with us. Our market survey also shows that 65% of the revenue that we would bring into our casino would come from the state of Indiana. That is new dollars that will be coming to Illinois. So again, I would urge you to support this bill as it relates to the city of Danville's inclusion so that we can create more jobs in our community, the dedicated revenue that we need to support services and our downstate pension funds, and then certainly recognize that a bill in Danville would not cannibalize existing, but rather bring new revenue into the state from what we would generate from Indiana. Thank you, and I'll look forward to any questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. My name's Tom McNamara, Mayor of the City of Rockford. it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank the chairman for allowing us and all of the committee members for allowing me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the city of Rockford. This is a vital issue as it relates to the city of Rockford's continued economic recovery. The expansion of gaming in Illinois, to me, is crucial. I appreciate the interest that you and all of the committee members have shown on this issue, and it truly is an honor to be the mayor of the city of Rockford. Today, I'm proud to represent dozens of organizations and thousands of residents who continue to be concerned over the lack of progress on the expanded land-based casinos in Illinois. We believe the time is now to turn years of talk about casino expansion into action. As we know, the city of Beloit, Wisconsin, and Ho-Chunk Nation are moving aggressively towards building a casino, convention center, and water park complex in Beloit. One study of the Beloit project noted that the proposed $450 million project could employ up to 1,500 people and generate more than $5 million a year in payments to the city of Beloit and Rock County combined. Clearly, this has the potential to have a game-changing economic impact for that region. As a city just 15 minutes from the Wisconsin border, Rockford, and I argue the state of Illinois, would be adversely impacted by a casino in Beloit. Our ability to attract tourism, top-level concerts, and other touring acts would suffer immensely. Illinois residents would bypass our community and take their dollars to Wisconsin. During the summer months, our Magic Waters Water Park, a key venue for the Rockford Park District, would potentially lose out on visitors choosing to visit the Beloit complex. I know you are well aware of that a casino in Rockford would bring much-needed revenue, tourism, and economic development opportunities to our city, Winnebago County, and equally as important, to the state of Illinois. It would allow us to continue our economic recovery that has lagged behind the rest of the country. And the Rockford region would be poised to further take advantage of the recent investments we've made in our sports tourism and convention infrastructure. Conversely, a casino in Beloit would have a detrimental and long-lasting impact on our progress. A new casino in Rockford would pose no impact on existing facilities in Illinois, because there are no existing facilities within 2 hours of our city. What will impact Rockford is a $450 million Ho-Chunk casino just 18 miles north of our city center. More than $1.5 billion in gaming dollars leave Illinois each year, and we cannot afford to lose any more. The idea of saturation is inaccurate. Rockford has several developers prepared to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into a city casino. If the market were even remotely close to being saturated, these members of our community would not be knocking down my door. Clearly, just looking at our neighbors, there is room to grow and lots of room. Iowa has one casino for every 171,000 people. Wisconsin, one casino for 358,000 people. Michigan, one casino for 396,000 people. Missouri, one casino for 464,000 people. In Indiana, one casino for every 505,000 people. So where does Illinois rank? One casino for every 1.2 million people. I urge you to bring forward a vote on expanding the land-based casino gaming and include Rockford in that important bill. The time for action is now to strengthen our local economy and that of our great state and prevent loss of important economic opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity.
Mayor Cunningham.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for the esteemed legislators for the state of Illinois for allowing me here to speak today. My name is Sam Cunningham, and I'm the mayor of the city of Waukegan. I'm excited to be here today because the city of Waukegan is ready. The city of Waukegan is ready to realize its potential to transform with a casino in our great city. Waukegan is ready to take its vibrant history, shaped by the Lake Michigan lakefront, our rich arts and music community, our diverse population of nearly 100,000 residents, and our location as the county seat for the County of Lake, which will allow us to be ready to add a casino to our great city. Waukegan is ready to move beyond the negative history of our 5 Superfund sites left by our Rust Belt past. Waukegan has always has and continue to meet the original intent of the Illinois gaming legislation, which is to help economically disadvantaged communities. Our diverse, multicultural community will benefit from a casino, but also be a benefit to attracting new customers. Waukegan has nearly 30 acres of shovel-ready property at the crossroads of I-94, Illinois Highways 41, 120, and 43. The proximity of our site to other major Illinois tourist sites like Great America, Gurney Mills, Waukegan's own Genesee Theater, along with the Illinois Beach State Park, makes Waukegan a natural choice for a casino in Lake County for Waukegan. Geographically, Waukegan is the last opportunity to keep Illinois gaming money in Illinois. Every day, a bus picks up Illinois residents with pockets full of discretionary dollars a block away from our Lake County Waukegan casino site, as well as from Gurnee and drives them to Potawatomi Casino in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, taking dollars directly out of the state of Illinois. A Waukegan casino can be the northern entertainment escape that allows people to get away while staying home in Illinois. Waukegan is ready to serve as the home to the long-discussed, much-deserved Lake County Casino in Waukegan, Illinois, while helping keeping Illinois monies where it belongs, which is in the state of Illinois. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today.
Questions for the mayors? Gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for your testimony today. Oh, Representative Harris.
I'm not to monopolize, but Mayor McNamara, the Ho Chunk Casino that you referenced, is that in progress? Or, I mean, is it being built now? When is it forecast to be built? How big is it? Do you anticipate that if, let's say, you were to get a casino, would that drain dollars or bettors from your casino, players from your casino?
So some of those questions I probably can't answer. What I would say, sir, is that they have picked up with tremendous aggressiveness the work that they're doing in Beloit. It's being proposed right now of $450 million. It's still in its developmental stages.
Okay, so they're just in their developmental stages.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Is Mayor Holfeld here? He's not. Okay. Thank you, whoever that was from. Oh, there he is. There. All right, let's take a 5-minute recess to let people stretch their legs. We'll be back at 12:10. So far, we've done a very nice job of sticking to a schedule. We have about 3, 4, 5 panels left, and we've done 5 panels, and we have about 90 minutes, hopefully, left of the hearing, give or take. So we're going to try to strictly adhere to the rest of the schedule and get out of here. Mr. Swolik, if you and Mr. McInerney, if you could approach the table next, we're prepared to hear from you. We'll start with Mr. Swolik.
Is that on?
It's on now.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Swoik, the Executive Director of the Illinois Casino Gaming Association. To anyone that's followed this issue for the many years that we've been involved in it, my testimony will probably sound very familiar, but now it's more important than ever. You've heard a lot about cannibalization and saturation this morning. They're not abstract talking points. They're real economic concepts, and they're affecting the brick and mortar casino operations. And more importantly, they are having a negative impact on the tax revenues casinos generate for the state. I'm going to gloss over a few of the facts real quick here, and then I'll provide a copy of this because I'm not going to go through the whole thing that I originally had. IGB data shows that 4.5 million annual visits to the casinos have been lost since video gaming began. And that's in spite of having Rivers Casino begin operations. So we're losing 4.5 million visits per year. For the first 6 months of this year, we're down about 480 visits. And we're talking, this bill actually adds the equivalent of 16 new casinos. You got the slots at the racetracks, the new casinos, the new racetrack, the additional video gaming. We're limited to 1,200 positions. If you add all those together, it comes up to about another 16 additional casinos. Our revenues, our tax revenues that we've paid have gone down by about $100 million a year since video gaming began. There's been $117 million expended out of the gaming fund for the operation of the gaming board for their expenses related to video gaming. All of our money goes to local communities, the operation of the gaming board, and then to the education fund. When video gaming passed, no legislation was passed authorizing the operation expenses to be paid out of video gaming receipts. So 117 million has come out of the money that would normally go to education to cover video gaming. So there's another reduction in amount available for education. We've got 3,600 more licensed gambling venues in Illinois than the state of Nevada. At our last count, Nevada had about 2,900 licensed gambling operational places. We've got over 6,500. These are the facts, and we think that they point to some cannibalization saturation. For one thing, in Cogfis's analysis, and they did a very, very good detailed analysis on some areas that are very tough to look at. But the couple things that weren't included in that analysis, one being after the initial year of expansion, the approximately $50 million a year additional operational costs for the gaming board would come out of revenues that are outstanding. In other words, the first year of operation, they come from the licensing fees, but from that point on, they don't come, there's no special appropriation for those. So that's a set aside that, again, will come out of the money available for education. That $50 million is not included in the projection of the approximate $200 million that they say revenues will go up. So now that reduces that amount. The other thing is that if you increase the number of video gaming terminals from 5 to 6, that adds up fast. That's about 6,500 positions. I talked about how many additional casinos this could represent, up to 16. About 6,500 positions would be by increasing one terminal per location where video gaming is now occurring. There's 5 new casinos plus the city of Chicago. There's the racetracks plus the addition of a brand new racetracks. We're not creating a bunch of new gamblers. This is going to move gamblers from one location to another. One of the things that also is not considered in not only the COGFA analysis, but I haven't heard addressed this morning, is that there will be some cannibalization of video gaming revenues if there are additional casinos. Of that 4.5 million visits that we lost, most of those people didn't quit gambling. Most of them started going to their local bars, restaurants, fraternal organizations, and playing the video games there. If there are more casinos established, some of the people that are doing video gaming now will go to those new casinos. So there will be some cannibalization there. Even if you think of 10%, that equates to about $39 million. But the big thing that hasn't been mentioned, I don't think at all this morning, except by maybe alluded to from the city of Chicago, is the new sweepstakes machines that are included in this legislation. They are very, very similar, if not exactly the same, in a lot of cases as video gaming terminals. This legislation authorizes up to 10 machines at bars, restaurants, double the number that are allowed there now. At bars, an additional 10, so I guess it's triple. Bars, restaurants, truck stops, an unlimited number at veterans organizations, fraternal organizations, and airports. Now, the interesting thing is the Department of Revenue can charge up to $100 a year to license these machines, but there are no taxes on them. Now, if I'm a bar owner and I've got 5 video gaming terminals sitting there that I'm paying 35% tax on, and I can have 10 sweepstakes machines sitting right next to them that I'm not paying any tax on, that's probably what I'm going to do. And we suggest that that will significantly decrease the amount of money that's available for, that the state is now getting for video gaming. So if we don't pass this bill, what can be done to help the state and the gaming industry? The industry believes there are 2 ways we can partner to produce meaningful benefits to the state: online gaming and sports betting that are reasonably regulated and taxed. And I know we're going to talk about those at the next hearing, but I'm just going to say 2 quick things. These are the 2 areas where Illinois citizens are without a legal, safe, and regulated venue. Instead, they turn to markets operated by the black market where there's no transparency, regulation, or consumer protections, and no tax revenue generated for the state. By pursuing a reasonable, targeted expansion in these areas of intense market interest, we believe we can reach new untapped markets, minimize cannibalization, and deliver substantial new recurring revenues for the state. We again reiterate that we're opposed to this bill and are more than willing to work with you folks on sports betting and internet gaming.
And fantasy sports, too.
And
right,
fantasy
Mr.
sports as part of internet gaming, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Swalk. Mr. McInerney?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, and my name is Tim McInerney. I'm here on behalf of PCI Gaming, Homewood, Illinois, and some other communities in the south suburbs. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing us to have this testimony today, and I certainly want to thank Representative Rita for all the hard work he put into what we think is a very fine bill. There is one line in the bill, though, that I speak against, and it's on page 374, 375, and the line says, "The first preference for an owner's license shall be given to an applicant who does not operate and is not licensed as an owner's licensee in Illinois, whose main corporate headquarters has been located within the county of the proposed permanent location of the riverboat for more than 3 years, and whose principals have regulated gaming experience within the state." This very, very restrictive language limits the ability of the cities to actually select the best corporate partner they can find. I know Homewood and some of the communities in that area interviewed many of the prospective operators, and they've been working for over 3 years with a particular company who is not from Illinois, but they promised to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the area, and the villages were very comfortable working with them. So I would suggest that if this restrictive language could be eliminated, it would open up the competition to make sure the cities are able to maximize the return, not just for the cities, but the state, but also get an operator there that's going to do the best good for the most people. Again, thank you, Representative Rita, for a bill, and hopefully we can work on this in the future.
Mr. Bennett from Jumers, are you here? Why, come on up. We should have, we don't want you to have your own panel and feel lonely, so we're going to bring you up now.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you? How are you doing today?
Good, sir. How are you?
Excellent. Well, first let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Bennett. I'm the president and general manager of Dreamers Casino in Rock Island, Illinois. But I also represent Delaware North, which owns and operates 10 gaming facilities throughout the U.S., as well as gaming, entertainment, and management here in Illinois, and they're a VGT operator. And in the spirit of your early request to keep it short, I do have a written testimony, but I'll just keep it to the highlights here. I do want to clearly state that we recognize, and when I say we, Jumers and Delaware North, recognize the positive impact that the recent gaming initiatives have had with regards to video gaming terminal expansion throughout our state. Jumers continues to support gaming expansion within our state, but only in areas that can support it. We need to do it responsibly and with the intention of growing this industry to produce maximum tax revenue while understanding and acknowledging that unique regions of our state will be affected differently by any proposal that's produced for your consideration. In 2016, 2 Iowa land-based casinos opened up within a 15-minute drive of Jumers. An additional 5 casinos operate within a 90-minute drive from Rock Island today. Earlier, you heard from the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability, and I'm not going to go through all the details that they talked about the deterioration of the Illinois market, but one of the things that they did not address was the reduction in total employment throughout the years as we've seen gaming expand throughout the state. Since 2012, approximately 1,000 jobs have either been eliminated or lost by the casinos in our attempt to operate profitably, and that represents roughly about a 13% decline. So that being said, any additional capacity within a 20-mile radius could potentially cripple us and have dire consequences for the community in which we operate. Jumers is not requesting any additional gaming positions at our casino today. We will support other forms of gaming expansion. What we do, though, request is we request the elimination of our admission tax to allow us to remain competitive with our Iowa competitors. Iowa casinos do not pay any admissions tax, which allows them to aggressively market to to the same database that we do without being penalized with the admission tax cost. We do recognize the direct and indirect economic benefits that the horse racing industry has in our states. We're happy to support video gaming terminals at Illinois racetracks that have live racing on the day that the gaming expansion bill becomes law. But because of our location, our area saturation, and market conditions, we must oppose the addition of video gaming and table gaming at our state's dormant racetracks. If, however, gaming positions are added within our region, we must request a reduction in Jumers video and table game tax rates to allow us to remain competitive in a market that will become oversaturated. We look forward to the opportunity to return before your committee to testify on sports and mobile wagering and internet and online gaming in October. Please know that Jumers and Delaware North supports and is very happy to work with you and other license holders on these topics. Thank you for allowing me to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from members of the committee? Representative Harris.
Just 2 quick ones, please. Mr. Bennett, you mentioned the admissions tax. Does Jumers cover that tax? In other words, do you pay it for those individuals who?
We pay a $2 admissions tax for everybody that walks through the casino.
But the individual does not pay it?
The individual does not.
Right, so that is
the casino does,
okay.
yes.
And I think that's standard with many casinos, but I was just curious if you do it. Mr. Swak, you brought up an issue that may need to be addressed in any future iterations of this bill, and you mentioned that the support for the Illinois Gaming Board when VDTs came online, there was no support for the Illinois Gaming Board from the VDT tax source. I mean, VDTs are taxed at 30%. As we know, 5/6 of that goes to the state, 1/6 of that goes to the locals. But what you're saying is all of the support for the Illinois Gaming Board comes from casino revenue. Did I understand you correctly?
That is correct. There was no appropriation made for the operations of the gaming board out of video gaming receipts.
So help me understand. As an example, I'm looking at the Illinois Gaming Board report for May. It's a little bit back, but I'm just interested in the flow of dollars here. The adjusted gross receipts in May for all the casinos was $120 million.
Okay.
The state share of that, and granted it's on a graduated basis from the casinos, I understand, but the state share of that was $32 million. Where does the support for the Illinois Gaming Board come from? Is that deducted from AGR? Is that
It comes out of the 32 million state share.
Comes out of the 32
And
million
that
state
32
share that casinos pay.
Yes. And out of that 32 million, a portion of that is for the Regulation of Riverboat Gambling Act, and a portion of it is for regulation of the Video Gambling Act. Their operations increased by about 50%, I believe, when video gaming. So they went from about 50 million a year to about 75 million a year. That additional 25 million or whatever number it is coming out of the taxes that would normally have gone to education, the money left over.
And that's statutorily required, correct? Or is it by regulation, or is it by rule or by statute?
The statute doesn't, the Video Gaming Act does not address the regulation of video gaming, the cost of that to be paid for out of video gaming funds, so it automatically is just coming out of the riverboat gambling.
No, I understand, but does the support for the gaming board from the casinos, is that statutorily, that's statutorily required?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting because, as an example, looking at the July report from the Illinois Gaming Board for the video display terminals, the net tax that was net terminal income tax was based on $36 million, which generated $30 million of state share. So my point here is, in essence, the VDTs are almost equivalent now on a monthly basis with how much money the casinos are bringing in. So perhaps it makes sense in a new or any change in the bill that maybe we statutorily say that some share of VDT money has to go in to support the gaming board like casinos do. Just an observation, but thank you very much.
Other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to sort of reverse the order a little bit here. We're going to go with Anita Bedell. Is she available? Anita, come on up. Anita, I only have you on the agenda. Are you having 3 people offer testimony?
Yes, Representative Rita asked me to bring some people with me.
Okay.
So I have Nancy Duell. She's going to speak about the expansion of racetrack gambling. And I have Jeannie Evans from Chicago, and she's going to speak about opposition to a Chicago casino and in the south suburbs.
Okay.
So I'll start with Jeannie Evans, if you don't mind.
Okay, Jeannie, go right ahead.
You have to-
Is it Jeannie or Jenny?
Jeannie.
Jeannie, go right ahead. Yeah. And
there, is that better?
there you go.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Jeannie Evans. I am a resident of the city of Chicago. I live on the south side. I am a supporter of ILCAP, and in my local church congregation, which is located on the south side, it takes in a large part of disadvantaged areas of the south side of Chicago, including cities like Inglewood. And I have firsthand experience with members of our congregation who have problems with gambling, who gambling is the source of addiction issues and marital conflict and divorce and theft from family members and all kinds of things. And so I don't know if any of you here today have members of your family or close friends who have addiction issues. If you don't, you're very fortunate. Some of you may. And the statistics are that some people there are middle class and upper class people who do go gamble for fun and lose a little money. But whenever a new gambling establishment opens in that local vicinity, there will be a percentage of the population who will become addicted or who will become problem gamblers. And for those who are not familiar with that, that's a kind of a grim picture. So I think you've all probably read about opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. So gambling addiction is very similar. It leads to people stealing money from their family members, embezzling money from their employers. It leads to spousal abuse. It leads to child neglect. It leads to violent crime. So where you have increased gambling, you do have an increase in these kind of problems. And so you should have a very good justification for it. And there's been testimony today that adding 10 new casinos is likely to only add $12 million to recurring state revenues. it is very clear that the cost to the state and city and counties will be far greater than that. So there will be increase in costs for police, for the court system, for social services, people going on welfare when they spend all their money. I mean, the cost, there's lots of studies that have been published that show that for every dollar the government takes in from gambling, they spend more in addressing these problems that arise from the increase in gambling in localities. And so when you increase the video gaming, where we're talking like 5 terminals at a location, this brings in local people. This is not bringing in tourists from out of state. And looking at the slide deck from the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability on page 17, very small amounts of revenue are coming from the new casinos. It's mostly coming from video gaming. So the problem there is video gaming is more addictive than other kinds of gaming, and it's definitely drawing the local people. These are small establishments. You're causing people in your community to lose money. And so I just hope the legislature will realize your main job here is not to raise revenues. Like, your main job is to build a great society, like to build a good society, a just society, a moral society, a virtuous society, a society where people can be their best. There are lots of ways to raise revenue, and raising it off the backs of the poor and the vulnerable is not the way to raise money. Statistics show that although some people who can afford to lose money gamble, most of it, like the bulk, the steady revenues are coming from addicts. They're coming from people who are poor, who can't afford to lose it, and people who are weak, who want to quit and even put themselves on the list that make it so they're not supposed to go in, but they still go in, they still gamble because they are addicted and they can't help it. And I just don't think we should be in the business of creating more addiction in our state when we still should be combating opioid addiction and drug addiction and alcohol addiction. There's also statistics that whenever a new casino opens, there is an increase in crime. Chicago has enough crime already. We don't need to be doing things that have been proven to increase crime, especially for $12 million a year when we're going to spend more than that on police and court systems from the crime that surrounds it. So just a few more points I want to raise is I disagree that this is going to raise revenues, but if it did, it's an incredibly regressive form of taxation. It doesn't get more regressive. You're taking it from the poor. There are statistics that show even ethnic minorities, African American and Hispanic and Latino, are more likely to gamble. Elderly and young, like teenage groups, are more likely to gamble. So that's where you're raising your revenue from. It's not a good thing to do. People have testified about cannibalization of other casinos. The reality is there's also cannibalization of business from more worthy businesses. So for example, when a new casino opens up, there's experience all over the country, local restaurants often go out of business, local nightclubs go out of business because they can't compete with the, often casinos give complimentary meals, hotel rooms, things like that. So it diverts customers from other hotels, it diverts customers from other restaurants. It might divert a tourist who might otherwise go to a Broadway musical, Broadway in Chicago or other nightclub or comedy club. They're gonna go here instead. So it's not creating jobs, it's diverting jobs from other establishments. People have a finite amount of money. If mom, spends $500 on gambling, she's not going to be buying shoes for her kids or backpacks and school supplies to go back to school. She might not be making more car repairs or a new washing machine. So money is just transfer. This is not new money. This is not new jobs. Also, this bill doesn't really get into the details, but it suggests that this is going to come forward, more provisions for internet gambling, internet sports betting. So we would also oppose all these expansions of gambling. Just one other thing is, I think this is going to create more addicts, but even if it was just, I'll say that there's other research, much more recent research out there that's showing a decline in gambling by segments of the population, that like millennials are less likely to gamble. So currently in Las Vegas, for example, only 37% of revenues on the Strip come from gambling. So people are going to Vegas, but they're going to take their kids to the water park or to watch a show or to go to the restaurant or different things like that. So there is, some studies are reporting a decline in gambling. So I think it's very risky to all of a sudden legalize 10 new casinos. I mean, 6 new casinos and then casino gaming at 4 racetracks, so doubling from 10 to 20, when there's all this talk of cannibalization. There's studies throughout the country that some kinds of gaming, like slot machines, are on the decline. We see from like Atlantic City that there are all these shuttered casinos that are just standing there like eyesores in the community, making things look bad because they couldn't stay in business. And so it, to me, doesn't make much sense to legalize 10. If you think we can get a little more revenues, do a test. Open 1. I can't see any reason to legalize 10 unless these are your constituents, like the people who want to open a new casino and make money, and to satisfy them all, you have to do 10 instead of 1. But if you're just thinking about what makes sense for the state and the budget and the people of Illinois, and you really believe it'll make more money and you think it's okay to do it in an immoral way, start with 1. Okay, I think my time is about up, but start with 1, and please don't make it Chicago, because I don't want one there. And thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Duell from Arlington Heights, and we've had a racetrack in Arlington Heights since 1927. But the racing picture has changed a lot since then. And I would oppose this legislation that would legalize table games and slot video gambling machines at 5 racetracks in Illinois. Then the racetracks could have up to 1,200 gambling positions in Cook County, and that's, you know, as many as a casino would have. And I would like to tell you that I checked with our village clerk, Becky Hume, in Arlington Heights, because we've had a ban on slot machines, and I checked with her, and the ban on slot machines is still in effect, and the current board has no intention to change that. I'm also concerned that this would allow a new track to open in Cook County, like we don't have enough already. This is not about saving horse racing. This is about transforming racetracks into casinos. In other states that have legalized casino gambling at horse tracks, more racetracks were open so the owners could operate a casino. But in these states, approximately 90% of the revenue comes from casino gambling, not the pari-mutuel betting on the horses. And the legislation would also allow the racing board to decrease the number of live racing dates. Well, I know that each year Arlington Park has been asking for more dark days. It also opposed betting on horses will decrease if table games and slot machines are legalized at tracks. But this allows the tracks to get a tax credit for 5 years for improvements and maintenance of the backstretch for capital expenditures after they began casino gambling. So why would they need to maintain the backstretch if they're not having many horses there? And also, anyone under the age of 21 cannot enter the casino gambling facility at a racetrack, but yet 18-year-olds can bet on live racing and off-track betting parlors. The Gaming Board has fined casinos and video gambling establishments for allowing underage youth to gamble. How will racetracks prevent underage gambling when 18-year-olds can bet at the facility? And the maximum fine that could be imposed is $10,000. And that would be a maximum of $10,000, even though there were multiple underage violations. And I want to point out that at the recent Arlington Million Day, Jerry Crawford, the winning owner, had handed out $2 win and show tickets on his colt before the race to 25 youngsters in the crowd. And so these children were able to cash in these winning tickets worth nearly $90 each. Churchill Downs has 9 casinos properties in 8 states, and they're interested in getting into Illinois as well and other places where they can get access. So because they're mainly interested now not so much in the horse racing as they are in the casinos. So Arlington Park had sold out to Churchill Downs, and now they're wanting to come and control access for more gambling to be put at the track for the benefit of Churchill Downs.
Thank you, Nancy. Anita, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I will be very short. But Representative Evans, you were mentioning Detroit, and they've done studies in Detroit. The level of pathological gambling is 4.8%, which is over double what the national average is. So the studies have found that when the rate of pathological gambling is higher in poor people and in minority individuals. So putting a casino in Chicago and also in Waukegan, the south suburbs, will increase this gambling addiction. The cost, there was another article that said that they ranked the states as far as in the country, how they rank as far as being gambling addicted states. Illinois was number 9. If this would pass, we would jump way up there. On average, gambling addicts accumulate between $55,000 and $90,000 in debt, and most cannot pay that back. And as a result, gambling addicts develop a high tendency to amass even more debt, suffer other health issues, lose their jobs, strain relationships, or even commit suicide. Less than 2 weeks ago, there was a man from Decatur. He was gambling on video gambling. Another man suggested he double his bet, and when he did, he won $150. So when the man who helped him suggested that he give him $20 as his share for helping him, the man refused. So as he left, the other man followed him out, stabbed him, and killed him to death over the $20. These are desperate times, and crime is increasing with video gambling, with more gambling. So the state will have to cover the costs, which is for every dollar you generate in tax, it will cost $3 to $7 in expenses. So again, as Jeannie said, for all this casino gambling expansion, the state would get $12 million. Then if you have to pay another $3 to $7 for each of those dollars, the state would be losing money, not gaining money. With all the lowering of casino taxes, another thing they haven't talked about is comps. When the casinos would give away free dinners, nights at their hotel, right now those are taxed. But with Senate Bill 7, up to 30% of that revenue would be tax exempt, 30%. And when this happened in Pennsylvania, they lost revenue for the state. So again, a lot of money is going to be taken away. This is a sweetheart deal for the people who want gambling. For the state and the residents, it's a losing prospect. Thank you.
Thank you all for that testimony. No, it's okay. Do you have any questions for Representative Harris?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Ms. Duell, you mentioned Arlington Heights, and since I represent most of the village, I know that this issue has been kicking around for a very long period of time. I know that Arlington Park has for a very long period of time sought either slots or now a full casino. I seem to recall receiving a letter a couple of years ago, I want to say 2, perhaps when one of the issues, one of the gaming bills was seriously being considered. I seem to recall receiving a letter from the mayor of Arlington Heights that the village board was supportive of Arlington Park's initiative. Now, the mayor was speaking on behalf of the board. I understand the mayor's position. The mayor may not be supportive of the expansion of gambling. I'll let him speak to that. But it seemed to me that I have a letter in my file from the mayor of Arlington Heights saying the board is supportive of Arlington's position on expanded gambling. Do you have any sense on that?
Well, they still have their ban on slot machines that's still in effect. And like I said, I just checked with the village clerk and she also said that the current board has no intention to change that.
Okay, I'll check my
So-
file, and if I
and
do, I'll
that's-
send you a copy of the letter. Thank you.
But it's a different mayor.
Say again? I'm sorry, say again?
We have a new mayor from when that other,
No, this letter came from the current mayor, the gentleman who's there now, the current mayor. But if I uncover it, I'll send you a copy. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make one last comment?
Well, yeah, we do have to move on, so just one last quick comment.
Thanks. Yeah, just to bring it back to this idea that casinos in Vegas, only 37% of their revenues are coming from gaming. And this bill, according to the Government Accountability Office, all the taxes are only on the gaming. They're not on the other activities. So if the trend is toward, the state should be thinking about how are we making money on all of the operations, particularly if Chicago is a city-owned casino, which I think is a bad idea because we all know that the private sector is better at running a business than the city. The city is going to be an incompetent manager of anything. That should be a private sector business, a private, this is a free market economy. We believe in the private sector, and so I think they would be better at running a business than the city. But if the city is going to run it, it should be taxed like other businesses. They shouldn't get freebies on their activities that are not gaming.
Other questions? Thank you, ladies.
thank you.
We are now going to have Corey Aronovitz from Pacematic come to the table. Corey, welcome. If you could identify yourself and offer us your testimony, that'd be great. Oh, and
good morning, Corey Aronovitz, Aronovitz. I'm here on behalf of Pacematic, which is a national company that develops and distributes software related to skill gaming and sweepstakes and electronic product promotion. I want to thank you for allowing me to present some short remarks today. Again, I've been practicing gaming law for over 25 years as a former regulator, educator, and in private practice. I've submitted very detailed information for you to review, and I'm available to answer any follow-up questions. Quickly, sweepstakes. Sweepstakes is most commonly known as no purchase necessary. We see it everywhere. It's a way for companies to market their products, to create traffic and brand recognition. Sweepstakes are governed under Illinois law, under the Illinois Prize and Gift Act. There are a number of popular sweepstakes games that are within the marketplace, mostly through popular brands that we consume each and every day. Electronic sweepstakes, which is the type of product that my client produces, are still sweepstakes, even though they utilize sophisticated development and software, but they are lawful as confirmed under Illinois law and confirmed by the Illinois courts. In addition, those who operate the kiosks within the state of Illinois have all received a license from the Illinois Department of Revenue. Advancements in technology continue to provide enhancements to consumers in many different industries. We see it in our everyday life, whether it's through booking hotels or buying consumer services online, ordering a car, or even buying magazines. We utilize sophisticated software to provide an entertainment value to end users, which creates additional traffic flow for small businesses. This allows many small businesses to provide discounts and gift certificates that could be used to help offset promotional disadvantages that businesses don't have when competing against large box brands. Our legislative proposal clarifies state law and adds some restrictions, and most importantly, it provides for those that are licensed by the Illinois Gaming Board under the Video Gambling Act to also participate in lawful electronic product promotion. Thank you very much.
Questions from members of the committee? Well, I guess Corey, you and I have discussed this. I have some questions about the for those that sort of haven't seen the way a machine works. Can you walk us through what it looks like and sort of how the process works?
Absolutely. So this is a standalone kiosk that does not connect to the internet. Think Pac-Man device in an amusement cabinet. When you step up to the game itself, you can insert currency through its bill validator. It will vend you a product, no different than any other vending machine. After you can, and that product can be a coupon, which is double the value, which can be used in an online e-tailer or at the brick and mortar shop, where many of our customers utilize offering that discount to offset seasonal items that didn't move. Some of these are in very small shops. Sometimes they are gift certificates which are worth dollar to dollar. After you obtain the coupon or the gift certificate, you are then given entries into the promotion. The promotion is either an instant reveal, think McDonald's, take the game piece off the French fry, or Coca-Cola, twist the cap. It'll tell you if you won. This is has the same effect. Or you can use the entries to play in the games. The games look like casino-style games. They are they have spinners and cards and things like that. Keno and bingo, they're just entertaining games. It acts like a sweepstakes. And so if you win, you're entitled to a prize. That prize can be either a prize or it can be cash. That's what's allowed under Illinois state law. What makes this lawful is that there is no purchase necessary. You do not have to buy the coupon in order to participate in the game. You can use your smartphone to enter into a code. The code will come back to your phone. You enter it into the kiosk, and you are entered into the sweepstakes, the game, and you have the same chance of winning a prize as if you purchased a coupon. It's as simple as that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and the follow-up I have is the outcome of the game is not a game of chance. It's not the chip in the machine spinning and then landing on a random winner. You said is it a predetermined outcome?
Correct. Sweepstakes nationally, the general way a sweepstakes work is there's the predetermined outcome. The randomness is in the selection of whatever that predetermined outcome is. So it's not a random game, and this software has been certified by an independent test lab to perform as you described.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Oh, and I have a last question. In the spring, you guys, the language in the bill as amended had this under the purview of the Department of Revenue. I think Spokesperson Harris and I would agree that agency has struggled in recent years with the idea of being a sort of an independent regulator of things. It's good for taxing and sort of reviewing taxes, but what it's not good at is being an overseer of these types of activities, and we've seen it manifest itself through the lottery, and we've seen it manifest itself now through the liquor administration, where providers are trying to move themselves out of the purview of the Department of Revenue and become independent agencies. So my question for you is, I know you go through amusement, you purchase an amusement sticker, and so the amusement tax is paid. But is there an agency beside the DOR or the gaming board, if you feel like the gaming board isn't the right fit, that makes sense for you guys to submit jurisdiction to?
It's a great question. Currently, the Illinois Prize and Gift Act is regulated by the Attorney General. It's pursuant to consumer protection, consumer fraud. If you have a complaint about how whether the game was not fair or the promotion wasn't fair, there's a mechanism from a civil standpoint with the Attorney General's office. And as you said, the Illinois Department of Revenue issues a sticker pursuant to its COAD, its coin-operated amusement device account, and a form that is submitted each and every year. And the devices, for the last couple of years, have been obtaining these licenses. if I had to think of an additional agency for oversight to maintain the integrity of the game itself and to ensure that those individuals and companies that are participating are securing the appropriate license, as well as providing a mechanism for consumers if they had a concern, could be the Department of Professional and Financial Regulation would be maybe a logical step.
Quick question by Representative Evan.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Quick question. Have you had any issues in any other jurisdictions with the sweepstakes, so in the what you call it? And do you have any best practices or thoughts on how to make sure that consumers in Illinois are protected if you have had issues in other jurisdictions?
That's a wonderful observation. So Illinois is unique from the standpoint that it allows this type of activity through the advancements in technology. There are other states that allow some form, so my client Pacematic adapts to regulations with each and every state. Sometimes it's a preview, meaning you get to see the puzzle or the end result before you commit to purchasing the product. Sometimes it's skill, meaning you have to complete 3 puzzles or whatever the standard is, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. It's the advancement in technology that allows for the technology to evolve and meet whatever regulatory requirements are in place at the time. As it relates to best practices, there are some things that can be done. As with any industry, when technology evolves and takes a product that we are used to seeing every day and now we add technology to it, there are some growing pains, obviously. And so best practices would really be constrained to advertising and limitations on the amount of a prize or the number of the devices where they can be placed, things of that nature, which would help ensure the integrity.
And again, I want to be crystal clear because when we have these hearings, have you had any issues in any other jurisdictions, or whether it be barred, misunderstandings, just things that need to be clarified so we can know before we have to deal with it? You didn't answer that question.
This product has not had any issue as it's, well, let me back up. So in Illinois, we've been challenged as to whether it was lawful under the Illinois laws, and the courts have found that it is, in fact, lawful under current laws. I do not represent this company in other states. I can tell you that they operate a lawful product in Ohio with certain restrictions. I can tell you that they operate in Pennsylvania. There's about 9,000 of my clients' software in Pennsylvania that operates differently. So here we have a predetermined outcome that is generated through randomness. In Pennsylvania, they're required to do 3 skill-based puzzles. First is a follow me, then there's a selection of a puzzle completing 2 pieces, something along those lines. But in the end, they sell a product and they give the consumer some entertainment with an opportunity to win a prize. And they have 9,000 there, and again, they pay a tax to the state. Those are the 2 states that I can tell you that they operate lawfully after being challenged.
Hey, thank you. I just think it's important. We waste a lot of money and waste a lot of time, quite frankly, in government, and just waste of time, litigation, waste of time, hearings, what have you, when we don't kind of put all the information out up front. So we're attempting to do this through the chairman. So we just to make sure that you're communicating if there's any issues, so we can avoid unforeseen issues. Thank you.
Let me just follow up with that. Our detailed submission should provide you a very robust roadmap to the legality and how it operates here in Illinois. We'd be more than happy to answer any follow-up questions after your review.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. We'll now hear from what I'm assuming is the rebuttal. Charity, Johns, Ivan Fernandez, Mike Galaka, and Dan. And Dan, I don't know if you're testifying on this specific issue, Dan Glosner. You are, okay, I see nodding. Charity, do you want to lead us off? Or did you guys have another, whatever order you want to go in?
I'm happy to go first.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Ivan.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee, Ivan Fernandez, Executive Director of the Illinois Gaming Machine Operators Association. Yes, joining me also are Michael Galeka, co-principal of G3 Gaming, a licensed Illinois terminal operator, and our association's past president, as well as Dan Klausner, Executive Director of the Illinois Licensed Beverage Association, and as you noticed, Charity Johns, President of the Illinois Retail Gaming Machine Operators Association. Believe it or not, it's been nearly 6 years since the first video gaming terminals became operative in Illinois. In September 2012, 61 such machines were put into operation. As you've heard numerous times today, that number has steadily increased ever since, reaching its latest high of 29,664 terminals as of July of this year. As you all originally intended, thousands of local taverns and restaurants, as well as hundreds of veteran and fraternal organizations, have benefited from legalized video gaming. The state of Illinois and nearly 1,000 of its local governments haven't done too poorly either. In fiscal year 2018, Illinois VGTs generated $422 million in state and local tax dollars. That equals $1.16 million per day in taxes and represents a 14.5% increase over the $360 million that were generated last year. Please bear in mind, since their introduction, video gaming has increased the state's overall gaming revenues by over 60%. As the number of locations and terminals have increased, so has the amount generated in tax revenues. If I can take you back to 2009, when originally enacted, the tax revenue projections from video gaming were $288 to $534 million a year. In the last 2 years, Illinois video gaming has exceeded the projected minimum by generating over $300 million in fiscal year 2017 and $352 million last year. Our association has a plan to potentially meet and hopefully exceed the $534 million projected ceiling. Several elements of our plan are included in SB 7 and House Amendment number 3. Specifically, the introduction of a progressive jackpot and increases in the amount wagered and won on a single play, along with the sixth machine, will significantly increase the entertainment value and produce greater player interest. These very elements have been tested and proven in other jurisdictions and did in fact produce higher yields. We are confident that the same thing will occur in Illinois when implemented. All things being equal, given video gaming's outstanding track record, with the Senate Bill 7 adjustments, the Illinois gaming machine operators are confident that Illinois can reach and perhaps even exceed the original projected ceiling of $534 million in state tax dollars. Therefore, we urge you to accept our recommendation and reject any proposal that includes resorting to a tax increase. Such a measure is unnecessary to increase the state's revenues and will cause irreversible harm to the very same businesses, those small taverns and restaurants throughout Illinois that you created video gaming to help. With regards to sweepstakes machines, on August 7th of this year, WBEZ Radio and the Chicago Sun-Times reported a story that they titled, "Under the Radar, Slot-Style Games Make a Mockery of Illinois' Video Poker Law." The author points out that the Illinois Gaming Board, as well as your own colleagues in the Illinois House, and 30 Chicago aldermen all agree that these so-called sweepstakes machines should be dealt with very differently than is being proposed in House Amendment number 3. This, however, was not the first media outlet to comment on the devices. According to an article published on May 23, 2014 in the Chicago Tribune, so-called sweepstakes machines operate pursuant to one sentence in the state's gambling laws, a sentence that was inserted and passed in 2013 with little debate and categorized as a cleanup bill. That year, the Senate introduced and passed SB 3478 to simply remove that one sentence and close the legal loophole that has enabled the proliferation of these completely unlicensed, unregulated, and untaxed gray machine reincarnations. 4 years later, make no mistake, we in the licensed, heavily but fairly regulated, and significantly taxed Illinois legal video gaming industry are very confused by this ongoing sweepstakes machine dilemma. It is a fact that sweepstakes machines and their operators are unvetted, they're not really licensed, they're unregulated, and they're mostly untaxed. Yet they openly and aggressively compete with licensed video gaming locations. As reported in the articles, we now know that individuals who failed gaming board scrutiny are now engaged in the sweepstakes machine business. We can even identify locations who had their lawful gaming privileges revoked, yet profit by installing sweepstakes machines immediately after having their legitimate video gaming machines removed for cause from their locations. As referenced in the articles, please understand that when it comes to so-called sweepstakes machines, your local governments are powerless to opt out, and they can't keep the machines from coming into their communities. For example, Chicago is an opt-out city for legal video gaming, a decision that costs the state approximately $200 million and the city about $50 million per year. Yet according to these news reports, so-called sweepstakes machines are far from being barred in many neighborhoods throughout Chicago. They're being played in gas stations, convenience stores, and even laundromats by people of all ages across the city right now. Yet no one has tried to determine how much revenue they've generated or how much has been paid to the state or local government. As currently presented, neither Senate Bill 7 nor House Amendment 3 include any such provision. In closing, I urge all of you to read the Sun-Times article and listen to the radio version for yourself. Both are available online. You can draw your own conclusions. And if you do, I think you will agree something must be done about sweepstakes machines. We respectfully ask that you please reject this proposed legislation and reintroduce and pass legislation to ban and eliminate the devices as was done in other jurisdictions. Thank you for your attention.
Charity.
Thank you. Thank you. Chairman Rita, Chairman Zaleski, I always try to use the W, so sorry, and members of both subcommittees, thank you so much for allowing me to testify today. As you know, my name is Charity Johnson. I represent the Illinois Retail Gaming Operators Association. I'm also the president and COO of Laredo Hospitality. We are proud to have grown 57 retail locations in the greater Chicagoland area in the past 5 years. As you may know, the Illinois retail gaming operators represent some of the largest single employers in the video gaming market. Healthy, successful establishments are key for the VGT business to continue to thrive. Certainly, without our brick and mortar investments and our customers, the program couldn't exist. Today, ERGOA members employ over 800 individuals. Specifically, my company, Laredo Hospitality, has over 300 employees, which includes a workforce of 76% women, 46% Latino and African Americans, and 33% of people over 50. As you know, video gaming has proven to grow state revenue incrementally through new play since inception. Statewide gross revenues for both video gaming and casino gaming has surpassed $2.8 billion, an increase of $1.3 billion in gross revenue since the inception of video gaming. Also worth noting, Illinois has over 20 casinos perched on its borders, siphoning revenue across state lines. I heard that referenced earlier today. Video gaming has proven to be a reasonable strategy in order for the state to keep some of that revenue at home. We would ask, rather than a 5% increase in tax on video gaming, we believe the enhancements already in SB 7, such as higher bet limits, allowing progressive jackpots, increasing the per spin win, to the existing video gaming law, will increase revenue and continue to stabilize the health of many small businesses that may have not been able to weather rising costs, including things like rising wages, healthcare, and rents. They always go up. In addition to those enhancements already included in SB 7, we propose considering additional enhancements to the program that would increase revenue substantially for small businesses in the state. These are as follows: enacting player tracking, adding the 6th or 7th machine, which is already in, the 6th machine is there, terminal for high traffic areas and locations. It doesn't have to go in every establishment, maybe just consider the higher traffic locations. And no restrictions on cost sharing between a terminal operator and a business on marketing and promoting their establishments. With these changes, the changes that are already considered in SB 7, we estimate they could increase the state revenue 15 to 20% without a tax increase. Enacting these revenue enhancements will not only help the small businesses across the state to weather rising costs, it will allow also for continued industry growth, additional revenue to help local city projects that are needed, and continue to innovate by manufacturers to keep the industry fresh and exciting. We now have over 29,000 legal terminals and being operated by licensed establishments in accordance with the law. The market still has substantial room for growth, as many of the most populated cities have yet to implement video gaming, the largest being the city of Chicago, along with maybe Naperville, Schaumburg, to name a few. The only thing that will slow down the revenue growth would be to enact laws that would be detrimental to the industry and would promote less investment in the industry. Video gaming is still a fairly new industry for Illinois, and we hope that any new legislation would encourage further investment in video gaming that would provide much needed revenue for the state, local governments, and job creation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glocka?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Michael Galetka. I'm an owner of G3 Gaming, and we are based out of Lansing, South Suburb. I wanted to take the time really quickly to address the regulatory issues that sweepstakes brings to our industry. I am a owner of what I consider a small business, a family-owned business, and I do business with approximately 60 other small family businesses that are hospitality businesses. These are the types of businesses that have made the most of video gaming. Video gaming has brought it down to the small business. And all of the expansion that is contemplated and any tax increases will take from those small businesses that video gaming has really helped. And those owners keep the money local. The money's not going to New York for debt payments. It's not going to Las Vegas for corporate things. I think the video gaming has become a great revenue for the state, and it's been an amazing opportunity for small business people in the state. And I think that aside from any of the other issues, that sweepstakes is, well, frankly, it's a spit in the face to those people who have spent the time and effort to be regulated by the Illinois Gaming Board. I believe that the Gaming Board has done its best and has done a good job on regulating over 6,000 participants. And I think that the fact that you can have sweepstakes slot machines next door, or frankly anywhere, and have just a loophole that was put in one sentence, and whether we make it legitimate here or we get rid of the loophole, to me is an important thing. I am a terminal operator. I deal underneath of the Illinois Gaming Board. I am regulated. Every location and everything I do is regulated. In fact, a small business, have spent over $500,000 in regulatory and compliance fees for my business. This is the type of business that is generating the state 30% off of every dollar, and that's the kind of business that you guys should want to prop up and not allow for loopholes. The example that I've kind of given is if this is made legit, the sweepstakes slots are made legitimate, what stops my location from deciding, I don't want 5 of your machines when I can have 10 of someone else's and I don't have to share any money with the state? 30 to 35% of your intake is a lot of money. And frankly, as far as a terminal operator in my position, If I have a problem with the gaming board, why should I stay in business? Why shouldn't I go and do the exact same thing I'm doing now, put 10 machines instead of 5 in, and I don't have to share anything with the state? And we can hear about how it's the same as a McDonald's monopoly thing, and even if that's true, we all know what it's being used for, and for that reason alone, instead of making it legitimate, the line inside of it should be removed, and the legislators should work hard to do that. It's been attempted on a couple other occasions, and you guys can look into the backroom deals that led to it not happening, something that seems like a legitimate and easy decision to make. But I guess my biggest thing, aside from expansion and taxes, will hurt what I consider to be a golden goose for the state. It is the vehicle that has expanded the pie in gaming for the state, whereas riverboat casinos, whether they've dropped off or not, looking around at other states, would never have grown during that time. You would have seen the exact same thing, just maybe not to the same extent. But currently, video gaming's taxes are higher than almost every riverboat that is out there, except for rivers. And frankly, I'd take their $700-800 a day hold and pay the extra taxes. And I just think that it's been a golden goose, and the state should work with us to help provide more for you guys and the small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glosner. Mr. Glosner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and hello to Senator Murphy. My name is Dan Klausner. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Licensed Beverage Association. We represent small businesses, taverns, restaurants throughout the state of Illinois. And Mr. Chairman, for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to mention a couple of quick points that have already been covered. We don't care for the sweepstakes machines. They're not vetted. There's no shared revenue. We are sharing our revenue for this legal video gaming with the state, with the local municipalities, with the terminal operators, and with our members. Also, our small taverns, we're now back on our feet after many, many years where we were struggling. Legal video gaming has allowed us to hire more employees, resurface our parking lots, put new signs up, refurbish our locations. And if we were to experience additional taxes, then some of those things might go away. Additionally, we have to pay local license fees in municipalities, and the municipalities are continuing to raise that. And that fee is paid solely by the location. So we are experiencing increases already there that are coming out from the revenue that we've made. And my final point would be that with this enhanced gambling expansion, it was previously brought to everyone's attention the small amount of gain to the state that would be realized versus the widespread expansion that could cannibalize and affect some of our members and the industry. Thank you.
So, Dana, I'll start with you. With respect to the sweepstakes games, are you advising your members not to use the machine, not to install the machines?
At this time, that is correct.
How does that manifest itself? What do you do?
Well, again, we can't make any demand on our membership, but we just advise them because of the gray area in terms of legality and all of that, with them having been vetted by the gaming board and having the legal video gaming machines, that we wouldn't want them to jeopardize the revenue of a definitely defined, legitimate gaming program versus one that has a lot of questions.
So you're telling them you prefer VGTs, but
We're telling them that we recognize that legal video gaming is approved and doesn't have the questions that the sweepstakes machines do.
All right, so that leads into my question for Ivan. I acknowledge how these sweepstakes games probably drive your members crazy. I guess my question for you as far as political reality is, we've sort of had a couple of bills to try to put them out of business. Those don't seem to work. And now we obviously have you guys coming to us with flaws in what House Amendment number 3 does. So I guess my question for you is, does your membership see any value in acknowledging what they are and bifurcating them as opposed to simply saying we shouldn't do them?
No, I want to be very clear. My membership wants to see them gone.
Okay.
They are openly competing with us, and as Mr. Galecka pointed out, there is a lot of time, effort, and money that's invested in their businesses, and to have entities like that come in and compete openly with them with the lure of jackpots that are much higher than what's permitted under the Video Gaming Act. You can see photographs of them saying that there's $5,000 jackpots available. Well, our limits are $500. So when the player is going to choose, it's pretty easy to see where they're going to go. Not to mention the obvious loss to the state and to the local governments with regards to those machines. So yes, there's no common ground, there's no middle ground, there's nothing to negotiate as far as we're concerned. We'd like to see them eradicated from the state of Illinois completely.
But status quo is bad for your membership.
It's been bad for the last 4 years since
Right.
this loophole was created for them, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ivan. Any other questions from members of the committee? Go ahead, Representative Ayers.
Thank you, and I know we're getting near the close, so I won't delay this. Mr. Fernandez, I listened to that NPR segment on the sweepstakes, and if I'm not mistaken, both Representative Andrade is trying to address this, and I believe the Minority Leader, Representative Durkin, has introduced a bill to either eliminate them or regulate them. I'm not sure which. I'm not familiar with the bill. You probably know better than I do.
It is to eliminate them,
To
correct.
eliminate them, okay. I can understand the concern about competition where you are paying fees and they're not. I'm not familiar with how their games work, even with the explanation that was given to us. I obviously know how yours work, but I think it's fair to say it's something that should be looked at. That aside, though, I'd like to talk about your opposition to the increase in the income tax, or excuse me, the increase in the tax in the bill. Understand nobody likes to pay additional taxes. You're going from 30% potentially to 35%. At the revenue streams that you're generating now, that would equate to about $20 million to the state of Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, if I calculate correctly. I think you made the statement that would be that would kill your business in your remarks. Doesn't that seem? I mean, at $385 million bringing in a year, you have a pretty successful business going right now.
No, I can check my notes, but I don't think kill my business was included in that.
Okay,
What I meant
my
was
apologies.
it will hurt some of the businesses that are currently being floated and are marginal. In other words, it's costing the terminal operators money that they will no longer have with a tax increase to keep their machines in those locations. So what we will experience, or what everyone will experience, is the lower performing establishments that currently have VGTs will have to make a very hard decision and pull those machines out and essentially remove that lifeline for those businesses. So we expect that there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses of the 6,000, 7,000 that currently have machines that will lose those machines with a tax increase.
Well, I follow that, and although the number of VDT machines seems to me almost on an exponential rise. I mean, every month when I look at the reports, there are more and more machines. I understand that we're at 6,000 locations, roughly 30,000 machines. Yes, some of them probably will fall off, but that machine, according to COGFA, each of those machines generates a net terminal income of $131. That's pretty significant, and yes, some of them may fall off, but you're going to have a lot more as well. not minimizing those that may not be able, but my point here is, I don't know that the 5% necessarily puts a lot of people out of business, and that argument needs to be looked at. Lastly, I have to ask this question, and Representative Rita, this may be for you, I don't really know, because we're at the end, and I can't let this go without asking it. And I'm not sure this is the panel to do it, but we're at the end of the day. There is something in your bill called Wide Area Progressive System Gaming. May I ask what that is? And the reason I ask is because my analysis said that might have an impact on the lottery. And I have always believed that while this is becoming a golden goose, the lottery is a goose that lays golden eggs of about $700 million a year to the state of Illinois. And I have a concern about messing around with something that produces $700 million.
Mike could probably explain it a lot better, but it ties into the progressives and jackpots for the video, for the VGTs.
Okay, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, the progressive would allow for, let's just say at a casino, you see over a bank of machines where there's a number greater than, say, the set number now is $500. The most you can win on a spin is $500.
Right.
So the wide area progressive was language that would allow either a bank of machines to offer a prize that is greater than that $500, so that there is there may be a $10,000 number that's up there, that there's a jackpot that's possible that is greater than what a single machine without a progressive would do.
So let's say the bank of machines at one of your locations could be tied into banks of machines elsewhere?
I think the rules aren't necessarily, that would probably come down from the gaming board as to exactly to what extent you'd be able to tie in, whether I as an operator would allow all of my machines to tie in together so that I'd have 60 locations, machines sticking, let's say a penny every spin into a progressive, that at some point in time somebody could win X amount, or if it would be just within the location. I don't think it's determined, in the legislation or anything like that.
Wow, that's something really new.
I may be able to add something else to that. It could be driven by the manufacturer, so it could be as all of the ballets, right, in the entire state are tied together, the ballet machines, and they are driving a progressive, and somebody could hit a jackpot. It drives visits, right, because you could go into any sort of area or, one of the bars or restaurants and potentially sit down and play the ballet, and there might be this progressive jackpot that potentially could grow, probably to a cap number, I'm imagining, but then somebody they would hit it maybe, and that would be kind of fun to do, right? So that's sort of the thought behind that. So it's not a lottery, it's a jackpot that's growing, and maybe it's based on the manufacturer or a certain set of machines that are predetermined by the gaming board.
Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate the explanation. I'm sure the casino industry loves that one.
Well, I'm sure they'd probably want one too. May I address one more thing about you had sort of said the establishments and the 5%. I come from the establishment side of the business, and we own and operate gaming cafes, and the bars and restaurants as well. Listen, our costs go up. We pay the rent, we pay the employees, our health care goes up. The cost of vacation time or hourly wages. We love putting people to work in Illinois, and I love building new businesses here. One of the things to think about is maybe the revenue components that Chairman Rita has already built into the bill in SB 7. Maybe we give those an opportunity to sort of take hold and drive revenues versus start with a tax that sort of pulls back more money from the growing businesses and the businesses that are able to make the reinvestment. I've seen lots of businesses redo shopping center storefronts and pave parking lots, and it's been sort of exciting to see in communities. I mean, we join our chambers with that money. And so I do think that maybe the consideration of allowing some of the revenue generating components to take hold first before introducing a tax. You can always do a tax, So I would just be a proponent of that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your...
May I also add short the 35%? The 35% I think will also affect what are the more rural locations and the smaller locations that don't generate, that in most cases need that small amount in order to keep their business open. Because if you look at the actual averages of what each location makes, it's not a 50-50 on both sides. It's actually a good majority of the, probably 70% of the locations in the state fall below your mean. And so what would happen, I think, is a lot of the businesses in small rural areas, that these machines provide an attraction for local citizens to stay in that small town that those bars and restaurants wouldn't otherwise have. And I think that those are people who we're dealing with as far as, and then for every, yeah, it may be a small amount to you, but there's also the 35% to the location that you're losing when you lose a location. You're losing that percentage of the state. You're also to the location.
Okay, thank you for your answer, and you did address my question, and I'm jumping in to finish off. Would it make sense? We tax casinos on a graduated scale. So if it's, what is it, more than $50 million they're paying, or I'm sorry, more than $250 million they're paying, I believe, a 50% tax rate. Would it make sense perhaps to tax VDTs on a graduated scale? So if they don't bring in, if that terminal doesn't bring in as much, they get a smaller tax and a larger tax if you bring in more?
As an operator myself, I like the cleanness of the number and the sharing of kind of responsibilities equally, because what that allows us to do, frankly, is to improve our product. And I think if you look at video gaming and its 15 to 20% growth, it's not just in the number of locations, because the number of locations have grown, but not to that extent. It's the fact that the operators are now improving the equipment, and that benefits the state at our expense, and that's where that tax rate rubs too. Thank you.
Mr. Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And since you asked me for an opening statement and I didn't say anything, I will say I'm pleased to be here and happy to participate in this. And while I'm new to being really involved with these issues, I've been around them for a long time. And I will just say, and Dan, I'm going to get to you with a question, but as somebody who grew up in Illinois and Peoria, and I realize the quaint nature that we've sold gaming on as a resident of Peoria, with the idea that when I was a kid, we're going to have a nice riverboat plying up and down the river, and people are going to be able to gamble, and it's going to be just like the olden days, to where now it's the Paradise docked in East Peoria that nobody knows if it's a building or a boat. I think our initial ideas on where we do things with gaming and where they end up are often two different things, which happens with a lot of things in Illinois. So Dan, I'm going to ask you a question specifically because you gave a really good defense of the mom and pop bar in a town somewhere who wants to get video gaming. And I think when video gaming was approved by the General Assembly, I was not here, but that was kind of the idea. Hey, my local tavern, I'll be able to go down, it'll be legal, we can do the video machines. I talked to a restaurant bar owner in my community last night in Springfield, somebody I'm sure you know very well, I'm not going to name him, but who complained to me vigorously specifically about truck stops and how the truck stops, the definition of truck stops for video gaming are taking away business from his bar and his restaurant when it comes to video gaming. That and I forget, Charity, the word you not cafes, well, cafes. That's a nice term for a strip mall. So Dan, I guess, do you hear from your, you represent a wide variety of members, obviously, but do you hear from your members that are complaining that maybe you're getting cannibalized within this own industry from some of these cafes being set up? Or he specifically, got on me about truck stops, that the people that are getting licenses as truck stops are not truly truck stops.
Yes, I do hear those concerns. And I think it starts with the process of how a license is awarded. Initially, the legislation has specific categories, And primarily, you had to be an on-premise, which is a pouring establishment where you're pouring beer, wine, or liquor, and truck stops. And the truck stops had to have so much gallonage of fuel and square footage of their parking, etc. But the process starts with the local liquor license. And once a local liquor license is approved, then they apply for a state liquor license. And once both of those licenses are achieved, they apply for the gaming license. But the gaming board doesn't necessarily dig down and review whether those licenses that have been approved meet the requirements.
So for truck stops, there's an affidavit that the truck stop has to submit to say that they meet the requirements. Is that correct? I believe. I don't know if there's any truck stop. Yeah, I got some head shaking over here. So maybe to the point earlier, if some more of the money was gone to the administration of the program, as Representative Harris pointed out earlier about a point that was brought up earlier. So are you saying that the board is not investigating the fact whether or not those comply with their requirements?
I don't know that that once you have those two licenses, and that if you meet the other requirements, then they award the gaming license. So, we have had complaints where a filling station or a small gas station, not a truck stop, that doesn't have a pouring license, would get both of those liquor licenses and then apply for the gaming license and get it, and simply just put a table up and two stools and considers themselves an on-premise license. And if somebody wanted to come in and play the machines, then they would just go over and buy a single beer and be able to use the gaming.
Okay. So is this an issue for your association? I mean, do you want to see this addressed?
That example that I just provided is, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else for this panel? Okay, thank you all. Much appreciated.
I believe that was the last panel, correct?
No, it's not. We have 6 minutes left of my goal, and I'm aspirational, if nothing else. Mr. Brad Long from Local 792 wanted to come forward. Is he still here? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm gonna come in under the wire. Brad Long, Mark, are you coming? Oh, okay. Is there anyone else who wanted to offer testimony that hadn't let our staff know? Going once, going twice. Brad, you're the cleanup hitter today. Put your mic on, sir. There's a button that lights up. There you go.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. My name is Brad Long, President and Business Representative for Carpenters Local 792 out of Rockford, Illinois, the home of the late Zeke Georgie. Our local is affiliated with the Chicago Regional Council of Carpenters, which covers an area from the Wisconsin border to the north and south of Springfield, Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River. And where our local is affiliated with the Northwestern Illinois Building Trades, which covers 8 counties of Northwest Illinois and covers 15,000 members. And all 3 of these organizations are in full support of a gaming bill, which will bring a casino to Rockford, Illinois. To us, a casino bill is a jobs bill. It means over 1,000 jobs for construction workers in our area. That's over $100 million projected initial work. And to echo what my mayor said earlier today, yeah, we're very concerned about cannibalism as well, but it's from the state of Wisconsin with that proposed Ho-Chunk casino. And so we appreciate your time, and just want to thank you and urge you strongly to support a gaming bill that will allow Rockford to build a casino.
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Long, maybe we can put the casino right next to the Zeke Georgie State Building up in Rockford.
I like that. I like that. And if you listen to the well-spoken lady earlier today and only build one, we'll take it in Rockford.
Okay. See no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Long. Much appreciated. See no other questions or no other business to come for the Joint Revenue and Finance Sales and House Executive Gaming Subcommittees. The committees shall stand in recess until the call of the chair. Stay tuned for a posting on a future hearing on some other forms of gambling that I know we're all interested in. So thank you all for being here today and for your attention.